Bada bing, bada bam.
Welcome to this week's Bacon a Mystery, Bacon a Murder. This is actually the first Bacon a Mystery episode of 2023, and I just want to say it's about to be a banger. We are talking about the highly requested Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. This book, I don't even know what to say. I am not a huge fantasy girl. I have been getting this book shoved down my throat for I want to say a couple years now, and I'm just not into fantasy. I'm not into it. I don't know what it
Why
is.
not?
I don't really love the idea of a 500-year beast making love to me. It's just kind of I like a good thriller. I like a good domestic thriller. I like a good whodunit, right? But I had to give it a chance read because I was like, you know what? I mean, everybody's hyping it up for some reason. I will literally bow at this woman's feet in every single word that she ever puts out on paper. This is a series. I will be reading the rest of the series. I've already gotten started. So please read them along with me and please go read this book. It was one of the first books in a while that I felt genuine melancholy when I was done with it. When you read a good book and you get so swept up in it, you almost feel like you went through an adventure and now you're just back home. And you're like, wow, my home is kind of boring. That's literally how I felt. I looked up from the book and I was like, I don't know who I am. I don't know where I am, but I want to be in this book and I want to stay in this world forever. She is the queen of world building. But anyway, there's so many books that she's written, so many other series as well that I'm going to get started on. So please read them with me. But Sarah J. Maas, you have my heart. So with that being said, let's get into A Court of Thorns and Roses.
And she's making
Yes.
lemon cake.
I would say, okay, this comes in handy because it's spring. Just remember, lemons are spring. I thought it out. Anyway, hunger makes people do things, Things that they probably wouldn't do otherwise. Hunger is a very primal instinct. To do anything while this aching just fills your stomach more and more. That's how Feyre ended up in the forest. Day after day, week after week, even when the ice and snow made her bones feel frozen, it was hunger that led her there. Winters are the worst in this town because you have to travel deeper and deeper into the forest to find really practically any signs of life, any sort of food. Feyre climbed the tree to get a better look at her surroundings. She's probably the deepest that she had ever been in this forest, which she knows damn well that's not smart. Mortals are not supposed to be this close to the border. The border that separated the mortal beings, the measly human beings, and on the other side are fairies. Now, again, if you're not a fantasy girl like I'm not, I'm like, bitch, Tinkerbell's on the other side? Okay, that's what I was thinking. They're not what you think, though, okay? They're not cute little Tinkerbells that like to buzz around helping you get ready for a big date. They're these magical beings that take pleasure in enslaving the human population and torturing them for sport and for, I don't know, shits and giggles. You don't try and meet a fairy. You don't travel to a fairy. You don't travel to fairy lands called Prithian. You don't do any of that unless you have a death wish, which Feyre certainly didn't have, but she had to feed her family. So they had just finished the last loaf of bread yesterday. And her family is her dad and her two sisters, and they're waiting at home for her. She could already see what their faces would look like, just hungry another day, looking at her, coming home empty-handed. So up in the tree, Feyre tried to calm her breathing so that she could really listen to her surroundings. She couldn't remember the last time that she ever stopped to smell the roses. Or even be her age. She's 19. She doesn't even remember the last time that she painted, which is something that she loved to do, but she can't even afford supplies now. They can literally not even afford bread. The only moments of relief that she had in her life at this point was her little sexual encounters. Her sexual encounters in a shed with a village guy named Isaac. There was never love, there was never romance, just a distraction. That's literally it. And then she heard the noise up in that tree. She drew her bow. And she could see this tiny little deer. It was so skinny, it looked like that deer had no meat on it, but it was still enough to feed her family for maybe a week, maybe more. That was her chance. So she moves as quietly as possible, trying to get the best shot. She's practically salivating at this point. It felt like the whole world went silent, and she zeroed in on that deer. But then she realized she wasn't the only one stalking the deer. There was somebody else. Something else. A wolf. Not just a normal wolf. This was weird. This wolf was as big as a horse. She had never seen a wolf this big. And she's thinking, how is that even possible? Feyre's like, it's possible if it's not a real wolf. If it's a fairy. She probably should run. That's all she could think about. If this really is a fairy, she needs to get as far away as possible. She's never seen a fairy in real life, but she's heard the stories. But maybe something struck a chord in her. After all the destruction that the fairies caused in her village, what if the fairy was trying to go into the human village? Why would they be across the border? This is still human land. What if the fairy was hungry? What if the fairy was bored? What if the fairy just wanted to toy around with humans? Feyre felt like she would regret it if something happened to her family because she left this fairy just run free in the woods. She mentally went over her inventory. She had a hunting knife, 2 ordinary bows, and then a third, the heaviest arrow, which is carved from mountain ash wood.
Mountain
It's like
ash wood?
Vampire Diaries. You know how ash only, or like some certain wood stake kills them? Yes. So from all the legends that the humans told, they knew that fairies hated iron and they hated ash wood. Ash wood is the only thing that can kill them, even though they're immortal. And fairies are not allowed to lie to you. So they can hide things, manipulate their words, their meanings, but they cannot lie to you. It's hard to say if these are even true, but Feyre believed it because they're legends, but also recently fairies went around burning down every single ashwood tree that they could find during the wars. So, I mean, there's gotta be some truth to it, right? Feyre wasn't around for the wars.
That's her, like, that, so that is like her lifeline almost?
Yes, that one ashwood arrow is her whole lifeline. She wasn't around for the wars. Wow, that's a very stubborn lemon, okay? She quietly grabbed the ash arrow and she had to aim right because in that moment, all she cared about was if this wolf was gonna come into the village and wreak havoc. She aimed. She had one shot. If that fairy wasn't even alone, if that fairy had another fairy lurking around, she's dead. Like she knew it. There's no even question about it. Just as the wolf snapped the deer's neck, because it's trying to eat the deer, she shot the arrow into the wolf and it dropped to the ground. She jumped down from the tree, ran up to it, and with another arrow pointed straight at the wolf, she looked at it. And it was so interesting. This wolf didn't fight back. The wolf didn't scream or growl. The wolf just stared at her.
Is the wolf injured?
Yeah, it's dying. And she aimed one more time and shot the wolf right through the eye. It was dead. Wolf, fairy, doesn't even matter anymore. Feyre could use its fur to make something or to sell it, right? So she skinned the wolf and hauled the deer all the way back home with the wolf fur draped over her. I mean, this girl was covered in blood by the time that she got back to her little cottage.
Why didn't she take the wolf back?
She couldn't carry both. As she walked back, Feyre wanted to feel remorse, you know? But it's one of those, I forgot what book we talked about. But where the crawdads sing. It's the swamps. This is the forest. There's life or death. There's not really remorse. There's no evil. It's just survival, right? So when Feyre gets home, she's greeted by her family in their tiny rundown cottage. Like, think Hobbit's house, even worse. Just super like made out of wood, even a wooden door to protect them against the elements. Like it's raggedy. Whatever predators are looking around, you think that door is gonna stop them? They had a tiny little fireplace to heat the whole thing, and Feyre had these 2 older sisters. But they acted a lot younger than her. Like, she acts like the oldest sister. So I'm going to introduce you to the cast. We've got Nesta, the oldest. We've got Elaine, the second. She's the middle child. And then we have Feyre. Also in their tiny rundown cottage is their father. Now, their mother had passed a long time ago. Not that she was like a spectacular mother figure to begin with. She was just really cold with her children. The type of parenting that she did was that she much rather enjoyed the company of other socialite families, other socialite women and parties. She loved to throw these huge, extravagant, elegant balls. She didn't even bother to teach Feyre to read. She was so busy being a socialite, and more than anything, her mother loved her father, and that was it. And their dad was barely a father figure. You're like, wait, what balls? What parties? They live in a cottage. They can't even afford meat or bread, right? So they used to be very wealthy. And then they lost everything. And now Feyre was resorting to trying to cook and clean and fend for the family. Most days, Feyre was the parent. She was the one hunting. She's the one cleaning the meat. She's the one doing practically everything. And Feyre was somebody that keeps her promises. For some reason, when their mom was dying on the deathbed, she was like, Feyre, promise me something. Stay together and look after them. Feyre agreed, not knowing how stupid this promise was, because none of her family members ever helped for different reasons. Nesta, the eldest sister, was so filled with loathing, hatred, disdain. She refused to help. She believed that all of this was below her. So maybe because she was the oldest, she had so much memories of what her life used to be, what the family used to be before they lost everything. Maybe she remembered how she was treated, having servants around, waiting around for her. Maybe she felt like it was her birthright to be treated like that. And she was just so salty at losing it all. Regardless, she felt like she was above it all. Never too above it to eat the meals, though. She would eat everything they cooked. But she hated everyone in the family. And you could tell she never spoke to their father, ignored his literal presence. She hated Feyre for being everything that she hated in her new life. So they lost their money when Feyre was quite young, so she doesn't even know how to read or write. She's illiterate. She's kind of smelly. She's skinny, not well groomed. She doesn't put on makeup or do her hair. She's like the ugly duckling, you get it, right? That's what Nesta thought of all the villagers too. She complained that they had no manners, no social graces, and they act. They treat all their clothes as if it's made of the finest silk. The only person Nesta cared about in her life was herself and Elaine. I don't know why.
Who's Elaine?
The middle daughter.
Oh.
Nesta would die for Elaine.
The sister?
Yeah. But oddly, it doesn't seem like she would die for Feyre. Elaine, on the other hand, was privileged, but she was nice. Like, meaning she never helped because she never thought that she would be useful helping. She didn't even know how to help. So it's almost like that ignorant, privileged mindset. But she's so nice that it's hard to hate her. And then their dad, he was just utterly useless. He had lost all their money in a get-rich-quick scheme, basically. He is flaky, not dependable. He talked nonstop of how they're all going to get their wealth back again and how they would rebuy their castle and live there. And if you ever left money nearby, he would spend it all. Maybe that was his only relief, because he would stare down at his broken knee, and the wounds were still there. There's like visceral marks on his knee. He had to use a cane to walk. So after they lost everything, their creditors came banging on their door and they smashed his knee in over and over and over again. Yeah, there was blood splattering everywhere. Feyre remembered she was the only one that saw it happening. She was in the corner of that room begging them to stop. Nesta hated their dad for the injury too. Not that he had a bad knee, but the fact that he didn't fight back really pissed off Nesta. She just felt like our dad is a weak man, and he's too ashamed to even find work. So the family, they had to spend most of what was left of their money on a healer to help their dad walk again, but he still didn't move around much, especially when Feyre went to the deadly forest. Like, this is the type of dad that would sit there and just be like, oh, you're going? Okay, bye. Knowing damn well you could easily drop dead in that forest. Like, knowing all the predators that lurk in that forest, other hungry humans that are so desperate they'll kill a human. Fairies, monsters, beasts. So Feyre gets to the cottage. Her sisters are so excited to eat and have food, but even more so because they knew that the wolf fur would catch a pretty penny at the market tomorrow. Both Elaine and Nesta, they want something. Elaine wants a new coat. Nesta wants a new pair of boots. Even though her boots are fine and dandy, she doesn't even go out. Nesta has boots that are practically new. Meanwhile, Feyre's are falling apart at the seams. Elaine's like, Feyre, I'm gonna shiver to death with my raggedy old coat. The two sisters start arguing while Feyre got to work on her meat, and her father is quietly scooting over and staring at the wolf pelt. Feyre, where did you get this? The risk, it's too dangerous. I had no choice. What Feyre really wanted to say was, you don't even bother to attempt to leave the house most days. Were it not for me, we would all starve.
So the dad knows it's a fairy?
Yeah, okay. It seems way too big. But she bit her tongue, and before she could blow up, Nesta chimed in. You stink like a pig covered in its own filth. Can't you at least try to pretend that you're not an ignorant peasant? Feyre bit her tongue to stay quiet. They didn't need another fight today. And that night, they had dinner with meat. And even when everybody reached for seconds, Feyre knew it was not smart, but she couldn't help it. She let everybody have seconds. And they all sat around the dinner table gossiping. Feyre was mainly just sipping hot water, enjoying the warmth. They didn't even have money for tea these days. And she overheard Nesta talking about her boyfriend and how she wanted him to propose. And she almost choked on her tea. Don't get me wrong, Feyre wants her sisters to get married because it would take a burden off of her. They would now be their husband's responsibility, less mouths to feed. But Feyre's like, Thomas Mandry? Yes. What does he want? Elaine chimed in. He wants to marry her. Nesta looked with cold eyes. You know, there's a coldness in Nesta, okay? She just never had any warmth. That's the kind of character. Is there a problem, Feyre? You can't chop wood for us, but you want to marry a woodcutter's son? I thought you wanted us all out of the house. Marry me and Elaine off so you can have enough time to paint your glorious masterpieces. And she smirked. Believe me, Nesta, the day you want to marry someone worthy, I'll march you up to his house and hand you over, but you're not going to marry Thomas. Well, there's nothing you can do about it. You can't tell me how to live my life. Claire Bedore told me this afternoon that Thomas is going to propose to me any day now, and I'll never have to eat these scraps again. At least I don't have to resort to rutting it in the hay with Isaac Hale in the random shed like some sort of animal. So she knows that Feyre's, having sex in the shed.
With who? Oh, the boy. I see.
Everybody knows. Nesta, Thomas's family is barely better than ours. You would just be another mouth to feed. If he doesn't know this, his parents must know this. Feyre remembered running into Thomas in the woods before, and there was like this desperate hunger in his eyes when he saw Feyre. She had a brace of rabbits. She had caught some in her trap that day. And Feyre never thought to ever touch a human or kill a human. Never intended to. But that day, she was scared that she might have to.
Because the guy's gonna kill her for it?
She has stayed away from him ever since.
What?
So she told Nesta, we can't even afford a dowry for either of you. We're in love, Feyre. You probably don't know what that is. Love won't feed a hungry belly, Nesta. Feyre, you're just jealous. I heard them saying how Isaac is going to marry some Greenfield village girl for a handsome dowry. Jealous? We have nothing to offer them. No dowry, no livestock even. While Thomas might want to marry you, you are a burden to the family. Nesta snapped. What do you know? You're just a half-beast with the nerve to bark orders all hours of the day and night. Keep it up, and someday, Feyre, you're going to have no one left to remember you or even to care that you existed. Nesta got up from the table, and the father tried to ease the tension. He would never dare say anything in front of Nesta, I'm just going to be honest with you. But he said, Feyre, what can we say if it's love? Dad, it can't be love. Not on his part, not with his wretched family. I've seen the way that he acts around the village. There's one thing that he wants from Nesta, and it's not her hand in marriage. Sex.
Why is she into him if he's so broke and...
I guess...
Isn't she so into status and wealth?
Maybe he promised her things. Maybe he tried to act like has more.
Love is blind.
Yeah, and the dad looked at Feyre and he said, we need hope as much as we need meat. Feyre, we need hope, or else we cannot endure. So let her keep this hope. Let her imagine a better life for a better world. And Feyre muttered, there is no such thing, before she got up from the table. So the next day, Feyre trails to the village with her sisters following very closely behind, literally breathing down her neck, because she's going to go sell the wolf fur, and they want whatever she gets for it. They're ready to pounce on her to see how she's going to split the earnings. Going to the market was always rough, because the smells, the spices that are floating into their nostrils, making the aching pains in their stomach just that much more obvious. They didn't even have money for luxuries like spices anymore. And before they run into the market, they are approached by the dreaded group, a group of women, the ones that humans almost deem just as evil as the fairies themselves. They call themselves the Children of the Blessed. They make everyone a little bit edgy in the town. Back then, long time ago, hundreds of years ago, High Fae, so High Fae are like the high fairies. They're fairy royalties. They're the most powerful fairies. And fairies in general can already rip humans apart. So High Fae is a level of power that humans can't even compete with. High fairies were not just gods or legends. They were the slave owners of humans. So war raged on for ages, killing innocent human lives because they wanted to be freed. But humans were slaughtered, enslaved, forced to build High Fae, their castles, their monuments, their sprawling civilizations off of human blood, sweat, and tears. They were tortured and killed. And the only reason they weren't still doing that to humans, at least not in the masses, was not because they had a change of heart, but because 500 years ago, a treaty was signed that neither the Fae nor the humans could cross the border, and everyone would stay in their own realms and they wouldn't kill each other. Sometimes Fae would slip through the border to mess with humans because why not? They could. The Fae had powers that humans could never even understand. They could turn your bones into dust from 100 yards away, regardless of the class or rank. This is just regular fairies, not even High Fae. From the moment a human is born, they are warned. Their children's songs, their children's books are legends and warnings about the fairies. The humans lost the northern part of their world to the Fae, and they were only allowed in the southern parts, which was already ravaged by wars. Like, they literally got the butt end of the stick. Humans just lay in the destruction, right? And now, here are these women, child of the blessed, they call themselves, standing in front of the market. Do you have a moment to spare so you might hear the word of the blessed? Nesta rolled her eyes. No, we don't. It would just take a minute. Go spew your fanatic nonsense to someone else. You're gonna find no converts here. You see this? and Nesta aggressively shoved her iron bracelet in the woman's face. This is what you should be wearing, not some silver bells to attract those fairy monsters. The woman fell back in horror. How dare you wear that vial in front of our immortal friends? Yeah, go preach in another town. We don't care. Another villager passed by shouting at the woman, fairy-loving whore! And then they stopped to say, don't you idiots understand what those monsters did to us for all those centuries? What they still do for sport when they can't get away with it? You deserve the end that you're going to meet with those fairy hands, you fools. All of you are every single one of you.
So what are they preaching?
That fairies are sweet and generous and kind. They're the blessed, and they will bless humans with that.
Then why don't they just go to the other side?
Who the knows?
Why are you standing here preaching?
I guess it's like, why do people not just go to the place of worship instead of trying to convert people, right? I guess they feel like they're on a mission. Our benevolent masters would never harm us. Prithian is a land of peace and plenty should they bless you with your attention. You would be glad to live amongst them. Feyre grabbed her sister's arm and pulled them into the market. Today was not the day. They needed to focus on this. When they got inside, Feyre split up with her sisters to find a merchant that was going to buy the wolf's fur. She knew where she could maybe get the best deal, hopefully, but she was quite the scary woman. The merchant was a mercenary. She's got like thick, dark, black hair to her chin. Her face looked like it was carved out of stone, like granite. Her eyes are so sharp and narrow. She looked like she had history, you know what I mean? I have a wolf pelt and doe hide for sale. I thought you might be interested in purchasing them. You steal them? No, I hunted it myself, I swear. How? Feyre told her, and, nobody wants stolen goods. It was important that she knew the truth. And the mercenary went over the wolf fur. And she said, well, you weren't lying about the wolf's size. Doesn't seem like a fairy, though. And then she named a price, and it was a lot. Like, more than what Feyre was expecting. She was overpaying. Feyre's like...
Wait, they don't think this is a fairy?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, and Feyre's confused, and she's like, I don't need your pity. And the woman looks at her and says, no, but you need my money. And the other traders have been cheap all morning. Up to you, girl. Why? Someone did the same for me once when I needed it. Figure it's time to repay what's due.
Really?
Yeah.
A generous businesswoman? I find that very hard to believe.
Very interesting, right? So the mercenary shoves the coins into Feyre's palms, like shaking, sweaty palms. And Feyre's just like, thank you. And the mercenary continues, word of advice from one hunter to another. Don't go too far in the woods. I wouldn't even get close to where you were yesterday. A wolf this size would be the least of your problems. Excuse me? I've been hearing stories of the things slipping through the walls. Are they gonna attack? No one knows what the Fae are planning. But we don't know if the High Lord's leash on them, on their beasts, is slipping, or if they're targeted attacks. We don't know what the attacks mean, but keep far away from the wall as best you can. We saw a Martax. What? So, side note, not all Fae are the same. They all possess different powers, right? Some Fae just look like straight up beasts and monsters. They're almost like the dogs of the Fae, right? And then some Fae, they look like humans, but they can shapeshift. Every Fae has different powers. It's really, there's no rule book for it. And the more powers, or the more elite the powers, the more high Fae. Like, you're gonna be noble Fae, right? Like the common Fae, they don't really have powers like that. Maybe it's just like brute strength compared to a human. So, she's like, a Martax ripped the village apart. Body as big as a bear's, head something like a lion's, 3 rows of teeth sharper than a shark's. They left the villagers in literal ribbons. Let's hope the High Lords don't show up. They would make the Martax seem like dogs. So the High Lords are like the kings of the Fae. And they're the scariest and they're the most ruthless.
High Lords?
Yeah, High Lords. Just think of it as a king, right? Mm-hmm. So they're the ones that command the magical evil creatures. So just imagine how powerful they are if they're the ones in charge of all of these.
What's the difference between High Lord and High Fae?
High Fae is like nobility. They're like the rich people.
Are they as powerful or no?
No. The High Lord is typically the most powerful in that kingdom.
So High Lord is above High Fae.
Yeah. So it's like saying like a High Lord is the governor or the president, and then High Fae are just rich people in the state. Yeah. Okay. It's like very different levels of power, right? So the mercenary pulls back her sleeve of her jacket, and her entire arm looks like it had been shredded. Yeah. And it's like pieces of her flesh look like they've just been glued back onto the arm. And she's like, I was down for 2 months. Took 4 months to be able to even walk again. I'm lucky to be alive. There's still poison inside of me from the Fae. Maybe it'll kill me one day. Maybe it'll take me down. But at least I know I killed the Fae first. Feyre gulps. Thanks for the warning. Yeah, good luck with your sisters. The sisters are like waiting on the side, okay? So she throws her sisters a few coins to spend at the mark. She's gonna decide what she does with the rest of the money later, but she's gonna go have sex with Isaac. So basically, that's what she does, okay? She goes, he's relatively handsome. What can I say? He's an average-ass dude. Nobody really cares about him, right? They have sex. That's their arrangement. This was Farrah's first and only lover, right? But she can't even afford to marry him. He comes from one of the more well-off farmers in the area, and she would need a dowry. So it's just not in her cards. She goes back home for dinner, where the whole table thought they were going to go deaf, because there was a roar so loud that it almost pierced their eardrums. And before they even knew what was going on, there was an enormous thing in the doorway. It was like a beast with gold fur, probably as big as a horse, but the head was almost like a wolf, and it had horns protruding from its head, and it had claws that were bigger and sharper than daggers and fangs, and it was just growling at them. Farrah's sisters wouldn't stop screaming, okay? The beast yelled into the tiny little cabin, "Murderers." Farrah knew in that instant it was the fairy. She had to act quick. She looked around. Her sister Nesta was pushing Elaine behind her, covering her with her own shivering body and screaming. Their father was crouching terrified in front of them like a little coward. Farrah blocked the fairy from her family. She needed to get the ash arrow, but it was behind the fairy near the doorway. And he screams, "Murderers." Farrah's dad starts talking first. "Whatever we have done, we did it unknowingly, please." And Nesta screamed, we didn't kill anyone, please. Nesta threw up her iron bracelet, hoping that it would do something against the growling beast in front of them. And Farrah finally snapped out of it. She grabbed a dinner knife off the table and she said, get out and be gone. She tried to aim for its neck with her knife, but he was faster. So he pulled the knife out, sending it flying across the cottage walls, and he bit right in front of her face, sending her flying back towards her family. It was like a warning bite. Who killed him? Killed who? The wolf. Farrah's heart stopped. The mercenary had told her it wasn't a fairy.
It wasn't a fairy?
Yeah. But it was, apparently. The whole family stood still before Elaine sobbed, "A wolf! A wolf!" A wolf with a gray coat. If it was mistakenly killed, what payment could we offer in exchange?
Who said that?
Farrah. The payment you must offer is the one demanded by the treaty between our realms. For a wolf? Who killed the wolf? I did. Surely you lied to save them. Elaine says, "No, we didn't kill anything. Please spare us." The only comfort in this moment for Farrah was seeing Nesta pushing Elaine further behind her, because Nesta would die for Elaine and everybody knew it. That's the only thing that gave Farrah some sort of solace. So she said, "I killed it. I sold its hide at the market today. If I had known that it was a fairy, I wouldn't have touched it." Liar. You knew. You would have been more tempted to slaughter it knowing it was one of my kind. And Farrah was kind of pissed. She was like, "Can you blame me?"
She has no fear?
Yeah. Did it attack you? Were you provoked? Farrah wanted to lie and say yes, but the answer just slipped out of her mouth. No. Considering all that your kind has done to us, considering what your kind still likes to do to us, even if I had known beyond a doubt, it was deserved. Farrah would literally rather die with dignity than be a coward and a liar. So she tries to square her shoulders. What is the payment the treaty requires? A life for a life. Any unprovoked attacks on fairy kind by humans are to be paid only by human life. I didn't know that about that part of the treaty. Most of you mortals have chosen to forget that part of the treaty, which makes punishing you even more enjoyable. Do it outside, not here. So all Farrah could think about was her family washing the blood off the walls, still traumatized. And the fairy goes, "You're willing to accept your fate so easily, for having the nerve to request where I slaughter you. Let me let you in on a little secret, human. Prythian must claim your life in some way, for the life that you took from it, so I can either gut you like swine, or you can cross the wall and live out the remainder of your days in Prythian." What? You can either die tonight or offer your life to Prythian by living in it forever, forsaking the human realm forever. Farrah's father encouraged her to go. You know, he's like, "Do it, go, Farrah."
Thanks, Daddy.
Yeah, thanks, Daddy, but that's also death, too. Like, imagine being a tiny piece of meat in a world filled with bloodthirsty magical beings that love to kill humans. The beast said, "I have lands. I will grant you permission to live there." Why bother? You murdered my friend, murdered him, skinned his corpse, sold it at the market, and then you said that he deserved it. Yet you have the nerve to question my generosity?
She's not trying to kill this one right now. She's overpowered.
Yeah. You didn't need to mention there was a loophole. Foolish of me to forget that humans have such a low opinion of us. Do you humans no longer understand mercy? Either you come live with me, human girl, or offer your life for the wolves in that way, or you can walk outside right now and be shredded to ribbons. It is your choice. Farah's father started begging, trying to argue. I can get gold. Please. She's all... Please. Good sir, she's my youngest. I can get gold. And the beast snaps at him. How much is your daughter's life worth to you? Do you think it equates to a sum? Farah didn't want to know the answer. She stepped forward, and she knew they had to leave. When do we go? Now. Farah turned to her family, and she couldn't even look at her sisters. She looked at her dad, and she said, as calmly as possible. The meat should hold you for 2 weeks. Start on the fresh meat, then work your way through the jerky. You know how to make the jerky. I left the money from the wolf fur on the dresser. It'll last you a little while, if you're careful. Farah tried to memorize her father's face. When spring comes, hunt in the grove just south of the bend. The rabbits are there. Ask Isaac Hale to show you how to make the traps I taught him last year. And Nesta, whatever you do, don't marry Thomas Mandry. His father beats his wife and none of his sons do anything to stop it. Bruises are harder to conceal than poverty. Farah's father ran up to her. You were always too good to us, Farah. Too good for her, too good for everyone. If you were ever to escape, ever convince them that you've paid the debt, don't come back. Don't ever come back. You go somewhere and you make a name for yourself. And just like that, Farah was thrown onto a pure white stallion, a horse, and the only thing keeping her going was the fact that the horse had warmth. She was freezing, and the only warmth in this bleak, cold future was the horse. And they start going northbound towards Feyland, towards Prithian. And on the long ride there, Farah starts trying to brainstorm ways to kill the beast and get back to her family. So the beast burned her ash arrow before they left. So there was that. So there was no way to fight the beast. There was no way to kill the beast. But he was giant and he's strong and he's powerful. And even if Faye Land, let's say she kills him, how is she going to cross the border back into human territory? Which brings her to the point of, what the hell is even behind the border? She was terrified. Listen, I'm not normally a huge sneaker girl. Like, I love a good pair of sneakers. Yes, I do. I like that they're comfortable, they're versatile, but I'm not like, oh my God, the specs of this sneaker, the logo. That is until I found out about Vessi. I am now like a sneaker girl at heart. Vessi is the sneaker that basically changed my life. So we live in Atlanta and New York City, which both of them sometimes have these random rainy weeks where it's just nonstop pounding rain and it's constantly feeling so mucky and wet, and I hate checking the weather. Debating, should I wear my clunky rain boots out? And then going to run errands on the train, in the car with these big stompers around, and it's not even raining. I hate it. Or worse, I hate when I wear non-waterproof shoes and then I end up getting my socks wet or stepping in like a mystery puddle in New York City, which is why Vessi is like my new front door shoe. That's what I call it. It's the shoe that you keep at your front door because you don't even have to think about it. You throw it on, it looks good on like any outfit, just about anything. And I wear it for errands, Vessi. Cute picnic in the grass, Vessi. Walking the dog, Vessi. Treadmill walks, Vessi. Even badminton, I wear my Vessis because Vessis are so lightweight, but if you ever come across random weather, it's 100% waterproof. It is so much easier than clunky rain boots, and they keep my feet dry in like the wettest of weathers. I love that they're also super easy to wash because sometimes New York City is really nasty. Throw them in the wash, you're good. They're made of this super cool Dymatex material, which keeps you cool in the summer, warm in the winter. They're like the perfect shoe for like every day. Am I in love? They don't even feel like they should be waterproof because of how cute and comfortable they are, but they're so great. It's a great travel shoe. Throw it in your luggage or even wear it to the airport because they slip on and slip off so comfortably. I have pairs here in New York City. I feel like I can't go anywhere without my Vessis. So make sure to check out Vessi, linked in the description, and use my code for 15% off. That's Vessi.com/BAM for 15% off and use code BAM for 15% off. Thank you, Vessi, for sponsoring today's episode. Prithian. All she knew about the fairies in the northern border. Let's talk about it. High Fae still govern the northern parts of the world. There's this narrow sea separating them from a massive continent called Prythian. There is a land border, but there's also like sea around. That's where the Fae lived. At least probably most of them. Who knew where else in the world they lingered in the shadows? In Prythian, there are 7 territories, and I'm gonna give you like maps. And there's actually this Redditor who did style guides for each kingdom, and I think it's so good. It's the Geektress on Reddit, so I'm gonna put those pictures here. There are 7 territories and 7 high lords. So they each rule one of the territories. And it said that the power that the High Lords hold, they can level human buildings and break apart armies and butcher you before you even blink. So the 7 courts consisted of, starting from the top, the Night Court. It looks the creepiest, like exactly how you would imagine it to look. Filled with mountains, snowy peaks, very dark, very night, okay? The book describes it as a land of lethal beauty. And then underneath that, you have the Day Court. And then you have the Dawn Court, and then a black slot of land called Under the Mountain. So there's like some very dark mountains right there. And then underneath that, you have the Winter Court, the Summer Court, Autumn Court, and finally, Spring Court is the border that separates from Farah's village. Now, the 7 courts of Prythian, the whole of Prythian, doesn't matter which court, they're all lethal to humans. When you cross over, you're basically free game to the Fae. Now, she breaks the silence. What kind of Fae are you? No response. What's your name? So there's a grunt of annoyance that comes from the fairy, and just like that, Farah is hit with this overwhelming sleepiness, and she wakes up days later with a metallic taste in her mouth, still on the horse. The metallic taste is magic.
Oh, it's not blood? Magic.
So magic. It's like he had used magic to make her fall asleep and stay on the horse. But when she looked around, she wasn't even mad because she was in Prythian, and this is what Spring Court looks like.
It's beautiful.
It's spring. Oh. Birds are chirping. There's a pleasant breeze. There's like blush pink peonies everywhere. It's like sauntering into heaven. They approach this mansion that's surrounded by flowers and flower gardens and vines, like ivy vines going up it, and the iron gates swing open. This would be Farah's new home or new prison. I mean, she wasn't really sure which one, right? But let's be real, there was nothing like this. Even when Farah was rich, she had never seen sights like this. It was like a princess's castle. Beyond the beautiful white home covered in pastel-colored flowers, yellow daffodils swinging in the breeze, literally spring. Like, imagine the perfect spring in like an AI-generated world, like true perfection. That is Spring Court. And beyond the house, there's woods, then there's sunlight, and there's movement. It's like the perfect weather. All the time. It's like those cartoons where you're like, I wish that was real life. Like, what kind of power even controls weather like that? It was winter in the human court, or the human land. How is it spring? Black and white checkered marble floors in the entryway. There's these long hallways with arched walkways and glass doors leading into these opulent rooms that have these massive glass windows that look out into the gardens. I mean, it almost brought a smile to her face. Until she realized that the house was probably built from the enslavement of humans. And then Farah was drawn to the dining room with a table longer than what she had ever seen in her life. It was the most grand dining table. It was filled with so much food and wine, and her stomach started churning. Chicken, bread, peas, fish. It was human food. But Farah was going to eat none of it, no matter how freaking hungry she was, okay? Because the first thing that they teach you as a kid is that you never drink the fairy wine or you eat their food unless you want to wind up enslaved to them. I mean, she's kind of already enslaved to them, but you know. So the beast sits down, and instantly, the minute that his buttocks touches the chair, he shapeshifts into a glorious, muscular man with blonde hair. Okay, think like Chris Hemsworth, the type of person with the golden blonde hair, the Greek god type of body, the Thor vibe, but he's wearing this gold mask that's covering half of his face. Farah almost screamed, not because he was hot, but shapeshifting is reserved for high fae. So usually if a fae is like a beast, it's stuck in a beast form if it's just a regular fae. So the powerful of the powerful, and they were lethal and without mercy. But interestingly, he has a golden mask on his nose, and his cheeks and brows are all covered by this mask, and it just has holes for his eyes, and he has these amazing emerald green eyes, because of course he does. And he just says, you should eat something. Who are you? Sit. Eat, unless you'd rather faint. It's not safe for humans. The food is fine for you to eat, human. Leave if you want. I'm not your jailer. The gates are open. You can live anywhere here in Prythian. Yeah, easy to say when you have powers and you won't be eaten by a fairy in 0.2 seconds, you stupid bitch. So another fairy walks in. He too is wearing a golden mask, almost like a fox on the top. And it's not like gold, it's more like that bronze color. But even then, you could see a scar starting from above his brow down to his jaw, and one of his eyes was missing. But it was replaced by an enhanced golden orb. And even with that, he was gorgeous. He had this red hair, like long, kind of to shoulder length red hair. And both of them were dressed impeccably, like screamed confidence and power. And he walks in.
Are you okay, babe?
Oh, yeah. His name is Lucian, by the way. What a name. Lucian. And the guy, the golden hair guy, Chris Hemsworth, he's Tamlin. These are what they look like, okay? Tamlin. Is Andres dead? Yes, I'm sorry. How? Nash Arrow, the treaty summons led me to this mortal. I gave her a safe haven. A girl? A mortal girl killed Andres? The treaty's magic brought me right to her doorstep. You're joking. That scrawny thing brought Andres down with an ash arrow. She admitted to it. She didn't even try to deny it. The red-haired, scarred fairy turned to Feyre. Did you enjoy killing my friend, human? Did you hesitate, or was the hatred in your heart riding you too hard to consider sparing him? Must have been satisfying for a small mortal thing like you to take him down. They both studied her, waiting for a response. Anyway, perhaps there's a way to level. Lucian, behave. So it seems like the gold-haired guy, Tamlin, is in charge of Lucian, right? But they're like friends, but he's kind of the head bitch in charge. And immediately, Lucian smiles, like a sick little cunning smile. My apologies, lady. I'm Lucian, courtier and emissary, and your eyes are like stars, and your hair like burnished gold. So he's trying to compliment her, I guess, out of nowhere, okay?
What?
And she said nothing. And the one in charge, the golden-haired one, the kidnapper, Tamlin, he said, her name is Feyre. If you don't want to eat, Alice will take you to your room and you could use a bath and fresh clothes. And with the sound of her name, a woman with a brass bird mask appeared, and her mask was nowhere near as intricate or as opulent as the two guys in the room, but it was a mask nonetheless. What's up with these masks? Feyre got up to go with her, and while they just made it out the door, she heard the two men arguing. Lucian was pissed. Dump the girl somewhere, kill her, I don't know. She's nothing but a burden here. She'd sooner put a knife in your back than talk to you or any of us. No. Not until we know there's another way. We will make a move, okay? And as for the girl, she stays unharmed. End of discussion. Her life in that hovel was hell enough. Then you have your work cut out for you. I'm sure her life will be a fine replacement for Andres. Maybe she can even train with the others at the border. Feyre's face went hot while she was led into her room, which was stunning, by the way. It looks like a Parisian green pale walls, gold crown molding, gold details. It's like a castle room. Other servants with a bronze bird mask came in and started tending to Feyre, helping her shave, literally bathing her, and she just sat there confused.
And these all fairies that's bathing her?
Yeah, they're like the servants to the high fae.
They're not humans.
Yeah. Oh. And the fae in the house looked like humans minus the ears. They all had like elf ears. They're all pointed, okay? Oh. And then they're all wearing masks. When they dressed her, they tried to dress her in like the silk dress, like the finest silk she had ever seen, ever touched in her life, but she refused. So they grunted and put her in some pants and like a soft cashmere top instead, okay? It fit her pretty well. And Alice starts brushing her hair and she nagged, "You're hardly more than skin and bones." Yeah, well, winter does that to poor mortals. If you're wise, you'll keep your mouth shut and your ears open. It'll do you more good here than a loose tongue. And keep your wits about you, even when your senses try to betray you here. Some folks here are bound to be upset about Andres. If you ask me, Andres knew what he would face when he crossed the wall. And the others, they understand the terms of the treaty too, even if they resent your presence here, thanks to the mercy of our master. So keep your head down, and none of them are going to bother you. And Lucian, he could use someone snapping at him, if you have the courage. And with that, Feyre was cleaned up, mostly against her will, and brought downstairs for dinner. The two men, the creatures, they're sitting at the table and they're drinking wine from golden goblets, like real gold, right? And Tamlin was the first to address Feyre. The food is safe for you to eat. He cocked his head to the chair at the end of the table. He's like, sit down. And she didn't move. She was like frozen. What do you want then? And Lucian rolls his eyes. I told you, Tamlin, your skills with females have definitely become rusty in recent decades. She's like, decades? The man must be old. He looked Feyre's age, but he's immortal, so he could be, what, 100 years old? 200 years old? 1,000 years old? Lucian says, well, you don't look as half bad now. A relief since you'll be living here with us, though the tunic isn't as pretty as a dress. I prefer not to wear a dress. Why not? Tamlin answered for her. It's easier to kill us when she's wearing pants. Now that I'm here, what do you plan on doing with me? She tried to sit down and she tried to hold her gaze from the steaming hot food. The smell of meat just making her feel drunk already. Nobody answered her question. Tamlin walked over, more like a stride, like a lion on a hunt, okay? Such arrogance, such confidence. And he starts quietly piling food onto her plate. I can serve myself. It's an honor to be served by High Fae for a human. And he just kept putting more food on her table, and then he went back to his seat. You look better than before, and your hair is clean. I guess this is his way of like breaking the ice. I don't know, giving a compliment. You're High Fae? Fairy nobility? Lucian coughed. I'll let you answer that one. Yes, we are. What do you plan to do with me now that I'm here? Nothing. Do whatever you want. I'm not your slave. I don't keep slaves. Do you wish for me to earn my keep, to work? What you do with your life is not my problem.
Why you took her
Yeah,
here?
Lucian leaned over. Don't you have interests? No. So typically human. And Tamlin says, do whatever you want with your time, just stay out of trouble. My family is starving. Please let me go. There must be some other loophole to atone for what I did. Now the red-haired one snapped. Atone? Have you even apologized, human? I'm sorry. How did you kill him? Was it bloody? Was it a fight or just cold-blooded murder? I shot him with an ash arrow and then an ordinary arrow through the eye. He didn't put up a fight. After the first shot, he just stared at me. Yet you killed him anyway, though he made no move to attack you, and then you skinned him. Tamlin didn't scream, but he assertively said, enough! I don't want to hear the details. My family won't last without me, not through the month. Do you know what it's like to be hungry? Do you know what it's like to not know where your next meal is coming from? I need to go back. Your family is alive and well cared for. You think so low of fairies that I would take their only source of income and nourishment and not replace it? So he's basically saying that he gave them money and meat and stuff. They're taken care of. It's really weird. So she's like, what? You swear it? And he's like, on everything I am and I possess. So for some reason, Farah was in a pissy mood and she shot up from her chair, and before she could throw herself across the table to try to stab the two, I don't know why, she just was like, you know what? You guys, okay? She felt invisible hands slam her back into the chair and she felt like she was tied down. And Tamlin this time very assertively warns her, I'm going to warn you once and only once. I don't care if you live somewhere else, but if you cross the wall, if you flee, your family will no longer be taken care of. So now it registers to Farah. Even if she made it across the wall, her family was doomed if she came back. She would have to hide them forever against the treaty, against this beast, and he would probably sniff her out no matter how hard she tried. And on top of that, at least right now, they're getting food and money, right?
Oh, because fairies can't lie.
Yes, and also the treaty is a life for a life. So basically he has the right to kill her, but he doesn't want to kill a human. Like, I guess this is like a moral fairy. So he just brought her to live here for the rest of forever, but he has to take her life in a sense. So this is his taking her life, and she's just gonna die in Prithian when she gets old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, and so he's like, the food is not enchanted or drugged. It'll be your own damn fault if you faint. So if you're gonna sit at this table, then you eat. And Lucian, try your best to be polite. So Farah sat down and she ate and ate and ate and ate. Okay, she's trying not to moan because it's the best food she's ever had. And Farah reached for more chocolate cake, but all at once, all the food on the table vanished. She puts her fork down, trying not to look disappointed. And he's like, one more bite and you're gonna vomit your guts out. I guess she's stuffing herself too much after having no food. Thank you for the food. And she gets up to leave. And Lucian speaks out. It's been a few decades since I last saw a human, one of you. But you humans never change. So I don't think I'm wrong in asking you why you find our company so unpleasant. Surely the men at home aren't much to look at? Farah turned around. You're High Fae. I'd ask you why you even bother inviting me here at all, or dining with me. True, but indulge me, you're a human woman, yet you'd rather eat hot coals than sit here longer than necessary, ignoring all of this. Yeah.
Look at this hot bod.
Yeah, he's I'm so confused. Usually girls be throwing themselves at me. What's wrong with you? Surely we're not miserable to look at. Maybe you have someone back home. Do you have a line of suitors at your door that makes us seem like worms in comparison? I was close to a man back in my village. The two men exchanged glances, and Tamlin said, Are you in love with this man? No. Are you in love with someone else? The two men shared another glance. No. And Farah couldn't help but laugh. Is this what you really want to know about me? If I find you more handsome than human men, if I have a man back home, why bother to even ask at all when I'm going to be stuck here for the rest of my life? We want to learn more about you since you'll be here a good while. But go rest. We're both busy most days. If you need anything, ask the staff. They'll help. Why? Why are you so generous? I kill too often as it is, and you're insignificant enough to not ruffle the estate, unless you start trying to kill us. Well, thank you. And that night, Farrah should have slept well in that warm plush bed of hers, but she felt empty on the inside, okay? She hoped that maybe at least he's providing her family with warmth and comfort, something more than what they had. And she slipped into a deep sleep before being woken up by a thud. She had set up a trap. Yeah, not that the trap is going to do anything to the fairies, but instead of trapping a fairy, Alice, the head servant in charge, tripped on the thing, and she was really pissed. And Farrah's like, I'm sorry. What in the bottomless depths of the cauldron is this? I didn't think anyone would be in here so early. I meant to take it down after I woke up. You think a bit of rope snapping in my face is going to keep me from breaking your bones? You think that'll do anything to any of us? Sorry, it wasn't. It was supposed to give me time to run. You can't outrun us either, girl. I know, but at least I wouldn't face my death unaware. My master gave his word that you could live, not die, and we will all obey. But by God, did you have to wreck those curtains? They were lovely. Sorry. At least you're willing to put up a fight. Anyway, let's get dressed. So they're developing a cute little relationship, like a mother-daughter relationship, okay? Like a mother-hen relationship. And they start getting ready for breakfast, and it's like a royal affair. You have to have a team of people getting you ready to eat breakfast.
What is going on right now? She's turning into a princess
I
here.
know, literally. And so Farrah is like, where are we? She's asking Alice, and Alice is like, somewhere safe. That's all you need to know. If you go poking around the grounds, you keep your wits about you, okay? What sort of fairies should I be warned about? All of them? My master's protection only goes so far. They'll want to hunt and kill you for being human, regardless of what you did to Andras. What am I to do now? Perhaps take a walk in the gardens? Farrah wanted to laugh. Take a walk in the gardens, okay? She hasn't done like that in years. So what are you talking about? Take a walk in the gardens. She doesn't have time to take a walk in the gardens. She's gotta go home. Anyway, she took a walk in the gardens. It was incredible. She could have stared at the garden for hours on hours. It was the most beautiful thing ever. Just endless gardens of pastel peonies and roses, and just the smells of the gardens, the birds chirping, And then when she got back in, and around there, she runs into Tamlin. Where are you going? Good morning. You said my time was to be spent however, and I didn't realize I was under house arrest. Of course you're not. Do you want a tour? No, thank you. But he followed around anyway, and they start kind of walking around, and he's scoffing at her idea of the treaty. That treaty doesn't ban us from doing anything except enslaving humans. The wall is an inconvenience. Border. If we cared to, we could shatter it, march right in, and kill all of you if we wanted. Do you want to destroy the wall? I have no interest in mortal lands, though I can't speak for others of my kind. What was your friend doing in our lands then? It's the wolf. What was your friend doing? There's a sickness in these lands across Prithian. The sickness started 50 years ago, and that's why this house and these lands are so empty. Most have left. The blight spreads slowly. So the blight is the sickness. It's made magic act strangely. Even my own powers are diminished. These masks are a result of the surge that happened during a masquerade 49 years ago. Since then, we cannot remove them. They all went to a masquerade party wearing masks one day, and the sickness came, and there was a curse put on them. And now everyone in Prithian is slowly losing their powers, and they're not sure how to stop it. And so Farrah is like, you didn't have a mask as a beast. The blight is cruel like that. It's not a disease or a sickness or even a plague. It's focused on magic, on those in Prithian. Andras was across the wall that day looking for a cure. Can the blight hurt humans? Can it spread over the wall? Yes, there's a chance of it affecting mortals and your territory. Right now it's slow moving though, so your kind is safe for now. They strolled in silence before Tamlin excused himself, and Farrah got pleasantly lost in the beautiful gardens, right? And she decided, you know what? I have a good idea. I'm gonna befriend Lucian to see if he can help me escape. Because he's Tamlin's right-hand man, right? Maybe he can convince Tamlin to let me go or something. But before she rushed inside, she heard this It's like not a voice, but almost a sensation, like a voice that moved like wind. It was soft, it was sweet, and behind her, the voice was behind her, and in the peripheral of her eye, she felt like this silver glow. And it's like out of nowhere. She was about to turn around to look at it when Alice's voice yelled, "Farah, lunch!" And then the voice was gone. So she went back in. And just like that, it was strange, but Farah couldn't help but feel watched after that. She stayed on track with her plan. That night during dinner, she stole a knife. A dinner knife. Oh yeah, not a great weapon. It's not even ash wood. It's just a regular knife. But something, okay? It's gonna give her peace of mind. During dinner, Tamlin announced, "Farah likes to hunt." "I don't like to hunt. I hunted out of necessity." "And how would you know that?" "I saw the bows and arrows at your house. When I saw your father's hands, I knew he wasn't the one using them. You told him of the food and the money. Fairies might be many things, but we are not stupid unless your ridiculous legends claim that about us too." Lucian smirked. "How old are you anyway?" 19. So young and so grave. Skilled killer already. "So what is it that you do with your lives? Spare humans from the treaty and have fine meals all day? With your immortal lives? That's what you do?" "Yes, and we also dance with spirits under the full moon and snatch human babies from their cradles." Tamlin says, "Didn't your mother tell us anything about us?" "My mother didn't have to tell me stories." "How did she die?" She's like, "What? How do you know that my mom is dead?" "I didn't see any signs of an older woman in the house." "Typhus, I was 9. And that's about it. The next day, Farah rushes to spend time with Lucian while he does patrol of the grounds. She even brushed Tamlin off, who offered to take her on a ride on his horses through the grounds so she could see the lay of the land. And she was like, "No thanks, bye." And he looked astounded. Seems like the guy does not get rejected quite often. And with that, Farah got herself invited to grounds patrol with Lucian. She mounts a horse. Lucian passes her a bow and arrow. No ash arrows today, unfortunately, Farah. And they rode in silence before he finally asked, "Well, no good game good enough for you to slaughter? We've passed plenty of squirrels and birds. You don't like them?" "You seem to have enough food on the table already. I don't need to add to it." "Is it typically your job to patrol the grounds as an emissary?" "I'm Tamlin's emissary, but this is Andreas' shift, so someone needed to fill it. It's an honor to fill his role." "I'm sorry. I didn't know what he meant to all of you." "So, when are you going to try and persuade me to beseech Tamlin to find a way to free you from the treaty's rules?" "What? That's why you agreed to come out here with me, isn't it? Honestly, I'm impressed and flattered that you think that I have that kind of power over Tamlin." "What are you talking about?" "Before you waste your precious few human breaths, let me explain this to you. If I had my way, Farah, you would be gone. I can't have my way because there is no alternative to the treaty. There is no loophole. I admire your balls, though, I really do. Maybe it's stupidity. But since Tam won't gut you, which is my first choice, unless you rough it around Prythian on your own, which I advise against, this is it. You're stuck." On that ride on border patrol, Lucian did reveal a few things, though. First, the blight seems to have been caused or exacerbated by a woman. I don't know, he just kept referring to her as she. She's like the Voldemort. Nobody calls her name, and everybody's terrified of her, and their faces go pale when they mention her. Lucian seems to be so scared of her. Yeah, it's creepy. Maybe she's like a high lady of one of the 7 courts. She also found out only that Tamlin can shapeshift, but he can shapeshift others. So Lucian can't shapeshift. He's not as powerful as Tamlin. But Tamlin can turn people into wolves. That's why he turned Andres into a wolf to cross the border.
Oh.
Yeah.
So they can only shapeshift themselves.
Yeah. And others if they're powerful.
Oh.
Lucian can't even shapeshift in general.
Oh, Lucian's always a human?
Yeah. But he has powers, but he's a human.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. And so Farah's like, "How did you get that scar?" "I didn't keep my mouth shut when I should have." "Tamlin did that to you?" "Cauldron, no. He wasn't there. He got me the replacement afterwards." He's talking about the eye replacement, okay? "So are there any fairies who will actually answer my question if I trap them?" "Yes, the Suriel. It's a type of fairy. They're old and wicked and not worth the danger of going out to find them. If you're too intrigued, I'll tell Tamlin and he's going to put you on house arrest, which you would deserve if you really were stupid enough to seek out a Suriel." And then during the patrol, the silvery, windy voice came back, making her shudder, and Lucian's voice sounded alert, and he whispered, "Put your bow down. For God's sake, put your bow down, look straight ahead, and don't react. No matter what you feel or see, no matter what it says, don't react, don't look, just stare ahead. It was strange. It was like Farah could almost hear a voice inside of her head, an airy voice telling her, I will grind your bones between my claws. I will drink your marrow and feast on your flesh. I am what you fear. I am what you dread. Look at me. Farah had to try exceptionally hard to not look, but it's like every part of her being wanted to look. And then finally, after what seemed like an eternity, it was gone. What was that? You don't want to know. Was that a surreal or whatever you were saying? No, it was a creature that shouldn't be in these lands. We call it the bogey. You cannot hunt it, you can't kill it, even with your beloved ash arrows. Why can't I look at it? Because when you look at it, when you acknowledge it, that's when it becomes real. That's when it can kill you. That night at dinner, Lucian announced that they went on a hunt, and everything was light and dandy until he mentioned to Tamlin that the bogey was in the forest, and Tamlin shot up from the dinner table, shaking the whole room, and left without saying a word. Where is he going? To hunt the bogey. You said it can't be killed, that's why you can't face it. Tam can kill it.
Let's go, Tammy boy.
And for a while, Tamlin was gone hunting. He would come back all moody and then go back out. And Farah, preferred him being gone. He was so intense. But she also noticed that Lucian cared a lot for Tamlin. He doesn't want your help hunting the bogey. He prefers to be alone. And there's no one else who can help him at all. He would probably shred them for disobeying his orders to stay away. He would be that brutal? You don't hold on to power by being everyone's friend, and among fairies, lesser and high fae alike, a firm hand is needed. We're too powerful and too bored with immortality to be checked by anything else. For some reason, Farah felt for Tamlin. He didn't even seem to want this position to begin with. It just seemed like he was a forced heir into this. He didn't even like whatever he's doing. Why does he want to help protect this manor? Why does he care about, he seems miserable. So from that night forward, Farah starts to have nightmares about killing Andras and the blood on her hands, and she felt like a killer. She would wake up in sweat only to wander the dark halls alone, and then it's just so quiet that she doesn't even hear him until his 8-pack is right in front of her face. Did you kill the bogey? Yeah. You're hurt. Oh, also, Farah had been holding a drawing of the map of the house, right? She's like, I'm gonna get the map of the house so that I can escape. But she can't write, so she's making symbols for what each door leads into. And he looks down at it with blood dripping from his hands, you know what I mean? Beastly. And he's like, you can't write, can you? Where can we clean up your hand? And he leads her into a small little infirmary, and there's a ton of supplies, and it's well stocked with a work table, and she bandages up his hand in silence. And she just said the feeling of his skin was very fiery, very hot, and her skin is cold. It's like touching hot coals. So I guess fairies are hot-blooded, okay? And so Tamlin is like, you can't write, yet you learn to hunt to survive. How? So it happens when you're responsible for lives other than your own, isn't it? You do what you have to do. You aren't what I expected for a human. And with that, Farah finished his hand and walked out without saying anything.
Tending to the wound,
Hello, are you guys joining me for lunch? Okay, if you guys have been following me for a while, you guys know that I have a serious, insatiable obsession with delicious food. I have a whole YouTube channel dedicated to good food. I love it so much, and that is where HelloFresh comes in handy. Because I'm obsessed with having a home-cooked meal every single day, and HelloFresh makes it so easy. You get pre-portioned ingredients that are farm fresh to your door, and you can even get seasonal recipes straight to your door. So you don't have to go to the grocery store, you don't have to browse online for all these crazy recipes and make a shopping list. HelloFresh makes home cooking so much easier, and it's actually really fun. My fiance does all of the HelloFresh cooking. He freaking loves it. He used to make the same thing every single day before HelloFresh, and now he thinks the talent is from him, not HelloFresh. He's like, I am Gordon Ramsay. I think the coolest thing is that you get all the good perks of cooking from home without all the stress. So you get to see exactly everything that goes into your meal. You get to taste the amazing food, but you don't have to go to the grocery store when it's hectic. You don't have to make these shopping lists. And on top of that, my food waste went down a lot because I don't have to buy a whole bag of carrots when I just need 1 or 2 for a recipe. Sometimes when I'm in a crunch, I get the HelloFresh fast and fresh recipes. That means you can get a meal on the table in 15 minutes or less. I love doing this for lunch because they have the perfect lunch recipes. I'm talking falafel power bowl, seared steak and potatoes, Southwest bean and pork burritos, and every week you get over 35 recipes to choose from HelloFresh. They have Carb Smart, Calorie Smart, so you can achieve whatever goal that you have for the new year. And you can even swap proteins, upgrade sites, so it's super customizable to exactly what you want. My whole family is hooked on HelloFresh. My sister is a working mom. She's obsessed with HelloFresh. Make sure to check out HelloFresh.com/baking21 and make sure to use code BAKING21 for 21 free meals plus free shipping. That's HelloFresh.com/baking21. Use code BAKING21 to get 21 free meals plus free shipping. And thank you HelloFresh for sponsoring today's episode. The next day, she overheard a conversation between Lucian and Tamlin, and Lucian was upset and Tamlin seemed annoyed. He warned Tamlin that there wasn't much time and all Tamlin is doing is sulking and glowering and he isn't even trying anymore. And Tamlin is saying, it was a mistake from the start. I can't stomach it, not after what my father did to their kind, to their lands. I won't follow in his footsteps. I'm not going to be that sort of person, so back off. Yeah, I know. She's like, what? And Lucian says, back off? While you seal our fate and ruin everything, I stayed with you out of hope, not to watch you stumble for someone with a heart of stone. Yours is certainly soft these days. The bogey was on our lands. On our lands. The barriers of the courts have vanished. Our woods are teeming with filth like the puka. Are you just going to start living out there, slaughtering every bit of venom that slinks in? You don't think I don't know what's going on in my own lands? What I've got to lose, Lucian? What's lost already? She has no idea what that conversation is about. That day, Tamlin and Farah go on a walk in the gardens. Not very consenting on her part, like Lucian just didn't want to border patrol with her that day, so here we are. And Tamlin says, are you ever planning on using that knife that you stole? What? I'm trained to notice small things, but I could also smell the fear on you more than anything. I thought no one noticed. Regardless of the threat, if you want to stand a chance of escaping, you have to be more creative than that. With your affinity for eavesdropping, maybe you'll learn something valuable one day. So she had been caught stealing the knife and eavesdropping. Lucian said you were running out of time? What did he mean by that? I'm immortal, Farah. I have nothing but time. Farah felt something in her bones when he said her name, like it just felt kind of intimate. And with that, he led her to the study, and with a snap of a finger, 1,000 candles lit up this study. It's given Hawthorne House vibes, okay? It's given old money, okay? It's filled to the brim with books upon books upon books. Do you need anything else? No. And she was in awe. She was in here so that she could learn to write. Her whole plan was that she's trying to act like she's bored, so she's trying to read and write. No, her plan is to write a letter to her family to let them know that she was okay and there's a sickness in Prithian and it might cross the border one day, so they need to go as south as possible. Get the out of there. Asking one of the guys to write it would be humiliating, but also they probably would write something else entirely, or maybe they would write it and then burn it and never send it, so she had to find a way to write it and then sneak it off back to human lands. She wrote down on a piece of paper all these words that were very hard to pronounce, and when Tamlin asked if he could help, she threw her crumbled piece of paper in the trash, like her ego's getting in it. You know, she's like, don't help me. You have done enough torture, like I'm here because of you. The audacity of this guy, okay? And at the end of the day, he's the one trapping her. He's the reason that she even needs to write a letter to begin with. But she also felt ashamed, you know, that she couldn't read. And the thing that bothered her with Tamlin, that she didn't get bothered by Lucian, was the fact that Lucian didn't pretend to be something he wasn't. She had no clue who Tamlin was, or what he wanted, or why he even is helping her, and that made her suspicious of him. He didn't understand, so he's out here saving her life, and she's just confused. Like, how many times can he promise that he won't hurt her? It's like a lover's quarrel. They're both like bickering. There's sexual tension there for sure. Anyway, in the study, on the giant wall, she sees a painting, like a mural of the map of Prithian. So this is when she learns about all the courts. And it all started with a cauldron. That's the story of the fairies. A cauldron tipped over, letting its gold liquid spill into the world, and those lands and those people were turned into fae. Yeah, and that's the map that she learned that she was in Springcourt, which made the most sense. It's like the southernmost territory in Prithian, right? And the whole reading and writing thing, taking too long. Farah needs answers now, so she knocks on Lucian's door. Come in, human. Farah tries to ask him questions about Tamlin, which he does not answer, and she says, too bad you're not a surreal, spouting any information I want if I'm clever enough to trap you. You have your secrets, Farah, and I have mine. Yes, but if you were a surreal, how exactly would I trap you? I would probably have a weakness for groves of young birch trees in the western woods. Also a likeness for freshly slaughtered chicken. And I would probably be so greedy that I wouldn't notice the double loop snare rigged above the grove to pin my legs in place. So he's telling her exactly how to trap one. I somehow prefer you as a high fae. Now, if I were insane or stupid, Farah, To go after a surreal, I would also take a bow and quiver, maybe a knife. Just like this one. And he set a knife on the table. I would be prepared to run like hell when I freed that surreal. To the nearest running water. They hate crossing water. I'll be conveniently hunting on the grounds. And with my superior hearing, I might be feeling generous enough to listen to someone who screams from the western woods. But it's a good thing that I had no role in telling you to go out today. Tamlin would eviscerate anyone who told you how to trap a surreal.
One more time, what does surreal do?
It's a fae that, you can ask any questions. So the fae can't lie, but a surreal has to answer your questions. It's like a truth teller fae. And it's not even just...
do they know everything?
They know a lot. Yeah, they know a lot. And they have to tell you. But that doesn't mean it's just going to tell you exactly what you want. Sometimes they talk in prophecies, you get it, right? She's like, well, it's a good thing that while you have superior hearing, I have a superior ability to keep my mouth shut. And as she walked out, he said, I think I'm starting to like you for a murdering human. Farah went into the western woods to trap a surreal. She took a fresh chicken from the kitchens. Nobody stopped her. Yeah, they thought it was weird, okay, but nobody stopped her. She set up a trap, placed the chickens, and waited. Hunting in these woods felt a lot scarier and more sinister than her old stomping grounds. She tried her best. She climbed a tree and she waited. And after a while, a snap, and this wicked, ear-piercing scream just filling her temples. She climbed down from the tree, and there in front of her is a surreal. Hunchback, tall, skinny, gray creature whose skin looked like leather pulled back over a skeleton. Looked like dry, like it hadn't had a sip of water in years, dehydrated. It had long limbs, yellow fingernails, a lipless mouth, and very long teeth. It had a Voldemort nose, no nostrils.
The fae that caught her was sexy and hot.
Yeah.
And this one is like a walking skeleton.
That's what I'm saying. Really, conventional beauty standards just never die. Are you one of the surreal? Human. Did you set this clever, wicked trap for me? Are you a surreal? Indeed I am. Now what would a human want from a surreal? You tell me. Ha! A test. A foolish, useless test. If you dared to capture me, then you must want knowledge very, very badly. Ask me your questions, human, and then set me free. What's the next step? God, we just got good, though.
It's so good.
It just got really good. Bro, you don't understand. I'm so ready to finish this video and go read a Court of Mist and Fury. It's the next one. Oh, you want me to beat it with an egg beater while the surreal is about to literally tell her all the secrets of life? You want me to pause and beat some fucking eggs. It's eggs and sugar, and now we're gonna whip in the flour, the butter, the lemon juice, and the lemon zest, but first, the flour. So she asks the surreal, is there truly no way for me to go home? Not unless you seek to be killed, and your family along with you. What do you know about Tamlin? Be more specific, human. Be more specific. I know many good things about the High Lord of the Spring Court. She's like, Tamlin is the High Lord?
Wait.
He's the High Lord of the mother Spring Court.
He's the top one?
Of Spring Court, of one of the 7 courts.
What the frick? What is he doing over there? Yeah,
I mean, he's in the Spring Court.
Yeah, but why was he out there? Okay, wow. What?
You're like, wait, why was he out there? Let me see his location history. Who is he flirting with, okay? So you didn't know. Interesting. Spring, summer, autumn, winter, dawn, day, night, the 7 courts of Prythian, each ruled by a High Lord, all of them deadly in their own way. They are not merely powerful, human. They are power. Everyone here is stuck wearing a mask. Are you not a member of this court? You have no mask. I am a member of no court. I am older than the High Lords, older than Prythian itself. And what can be done about this blight? Stay with the High Lord, human. That's all you can do. You will be safe. Do not interfere. Do not go looking for answers after today, or else you will be devoured. He will shield you away, so stay close to him, and all will be right. Where did the blight come from? Across the violent western sea, there is another fairy kingdom, Highburn. Ruled by a wicked, powerful king, yes. Yes, a king, not a high lord human. There, his territory is not divided into courts. He is the law unto himself. Humans no longer exist in that world. His throne is made of their bones. For some time now, the king of Highburn has been unhappy with the treaty that the High Fae have made with the humans. He resents that he was forced to sign it, let his mortal slaves go and remain confined in his damp green island on the edge of the world. So 50 years ago, he dispatched his most trusted and loyal commanders, the deadliest warriors, to wage war. But not a bloody war. He sent spies and courtiers and lovers. They infiltrated various high fae courts and kingdoms and empires in Perithian and around the world for the past 50 years. And when they gathered enough information, he made his plan. And then, the surreal stopped and whispered, "We are not alone. Human, you must free me and run. Run for the High Lord's manor, and do not forget what I have told you. Stay with the High Lord and live to see everything righted." Beautiful. Does this not remind you of Spring Court? These are beautiful. We're just gonna bake them now. It basically alerts her that there's something else around, and she's like, what is it? The Naga. Fairies made of shadow, hate, and rot. Free me, human. They heard my scream, they have smelled you. They will cage me if they catch me here. Free me and return to the High Lord's side. So, Farah, she tries to free the surreal, but the Naga appeared from the trees, right? And they were a nightmare. They were covered in scales. They had talons for hands, humanoid bodies, but like snake-like features, and they looked hungry. One of them spoke. The Dark Mother sent us a gift today, and a meal. So the surreal is the gift, the human is the meal. The surreal begged for Farah to set him free, and she had 10 arrows, and one of the Naga was already holding the surreal in place. She knew she had a chance to run or get them distracted, but instead, Farah used her first arrow to shoot the surreal down, and like a flash of light, the surreal was gone. And it was just Farah as their snack. She shot another arrow, hitting a Naga, and she starts running. She runs as far as she could, but the woods are deep, they're winding, they're unforgiving. She's merely a human. Like, how is she going to survive against these monster fae? She thought of Lucian, where he could be, because remember, he's going to be hunting around. He's listening for a scream. I mean, with this commotion, with them chasing after her, he should have heard something. She was able to make it into an open clearing in the woods, and she was surrounded by not one, but but three of them. She had her bow ready to strike, and they were laughing. Getting closer and closer, they hissed at her. "When we're done ripping off your skin, you will wish you hadn't crossed into Prithian. We will cut you up so fine there won't be much for the crows to pick at. You will bleed. We'll bleed you nice and slow." One of them pinned her onto the ground, and she tried stabbing them with Lucian's hunting knife in the neck. And just as they were about to rip her to shreds, the one starts screeching. And she hears a growl. Of course she does. And she watched Tamlin rip up all of them in one easy swoop. The High Lord. There was just pure rage, like feral rage in his eyes as he's killing these three beasts. And then he reaches out for her, and she instinctively is like terrified of him. And his voice gets softer, and he's like, "Farah." And then the claws slip back into his hands. And she's like in shock. She's traumatized. She's like, "How?" "I was tracking the pack of them. The four escaped and must have followed you into the woods when they heard you scream." He reached down to touch her, and the pain of her arm and her face faded, so the metallic scent of magic filled the air. He's healing her. "I found one of them dead half a mile away. I saw one of my arrows in its throat, so I followed it here." Tamlin reached out and helped her up. She reached for his hand, and he had saved her. He'd killed his own kind for her, really. And now he was saying, "Let's go home." Farah learned that day that after killing the Naga, there was no triumph in Tamlin.
There's no what?
Triumph. Like, he wasn't happy that he killed and he won. He just seemed almost more shame and defeat. It seemed like he's not bloodthirsty, like he wasn't trying, he didn't want to kill. A lot of fairies kill for sport. They kill fairies, they kill humans for sport, but he didn't enjoy any of it. He didn't enjoy a kill. It actually seemed to hurt him to kill. After being cleaned up and bathed by Alice, Farah headed down to dinner, and Lucian seemed apologetic for not being there to save her that night. Or at least Farah thought he was being apologetic. Like, this is his way of apologizing. I heard you two had a rather exciting afternoon. I wish I could have been there to help. Regardless, you look lovely, Farah, after your hell-spent afternoon. Farah snorted. I thought fairies couldn't lie. Tamlin choked on his wine, and Lucian grinned. Who told you that? Everyone knows it. Fairies can't lie. Of course we can lie. We find lying to be an art. And we lied when we told those ancient mortals that we couldn't speak an untruth. How else would we get them to trust us and do our bidding? Farah crinkled her brows. They can lie. What about iron? Iron doesn't do a lick of harm. Only ash, as we all know. Farah looked at Tamlin. Tamlin said, even though Lucian has revealed some of our closely guarded secrets, we have never used your misinformation against you. We never willingly lied to you. I don't know if that makes her feel any better. She sat down to eat, and Tamlin asked her if she was all right. And she was confused and taken aback by the concern in his eyes, like he seemed genuinely worried for her. And she confessed that she caught a surreal. But she lied and said that the Naga had interrupted her before she could even ask anything of value. And Tamlin was impressed. You actually snared the surreal, a human girl. What? Is this supposed to be hard? They share a look, and Tamlin brought up her family. You love your family very much, don't you? I wonder if they realize it, that everything that you've done wasn't just about a promise that you made to your mother or for your sake, but for theirs. I could still help you write to them, you know? Leave me alone. Like, Farah gets really sensitive about it, okay? So before Farah could storm out, Tamlin was already in front of her because he's super fast. And he's trying to say, I'm not insulting you. Well, I don't need your help. Clearly not. A human who can take down a fairy in wolf skin, who ensnared a surreal and killed 2 Naga on her own, they're fools. They're fools for not seeing it. You gave up so much for your family. And then he lifted his hand to touch her cheek, but he stopped before he made contact, and he dropped his hand. And he said, do you even know how to laugh? I don't want your pity. Do you want a friend, Farah? Can fairies even be friends with mortals? And Tamlin went on to say, 500 years ago, enough fairies were friends with mortals that they went to war on their behalf. How do you think the human army survived as long as they did so much damage to my kind? Even came to a treaty with ash weapons alone? No. Fairies fought and died at the human side for their freedom. They mourned when the only solution was to separate our people. Were you one of them? I was a child at the time, too young to understand what was going on, but had I been old enough, I would have been against slavery, against tyranny. I would have gladly gone to my death no matter whose freedom I was defending. For what it's worth, your family is safe. They have no memory of me bursting into their cottage. They think a long-lost, wealthy aunt called you to her aid on her deathbed. They know you're alive, they know you're fed, they know you're cared for. You altered their memories? Glamored their memories. It's like putting a veil over them. I was afraid that your father might come after you or persuade villagers to cross the wall with him to find you, further violating the treaty. Well, you don't know him. My father wouldn't have bothered to do either. Yes, he would have. And that night, Farah asked Tamlin if she could paint. That's what she wanted to do in her free time. Paint. She said, I'm not good, but if it's not too much trouble, I won't make a mess. I can paint outside if you'd like. I can help work to pay for the supplies. It won't be a problem. The house is too clean anyway. Paint wherever you want. And he offered to show her the gallery. He had had it closed off, but he wanted to show it to her, and he smiled at her, and Farah felt a smile creeping on her own lips. She had never, ever had her breath catch like that before. Not by a man, not by Isaac, never. And so that night, she went to sleep like a giggling little girl, and then a scream shattered the peace of the night. Farah shot up in her bed, ran out, and it was the scream of pure pain, pure suffering. She ran out to see Tamlin hauling a fairy on his back. There was blood soaking out of that fairy, and it had black stumps on its shoulder blades that were bleeding profusely, and Tamlin yelled at Lucian to clean off the table for him. He was dumped just over the border. Summer court. The fairy cried, my wings, my wings. She took my wings. Again, who the fork is she, right? But whoever she was, she ripped off the fairy's wings. Literally ripped it off. So it's screaming, she took my wings, my wings. Farah watched in horror and reached for the fairy's arm to hold him down while Tamlin tried to help and stitch him up. The fairy's skin was like velvet smooth, like very slippery. Lucian was useless. He was throwing up in the corner. And Farah's breathing...
Lucian is throwing up?
Yeah.
What the heck?
The fairy's breathing slowed and it cried to Farah, she took my wings. She took them. I know. And Tamlin whispered to Farah, the wounds aren't clotting. Can't you use magic? Do something? not for major damage. Once, but not any longer. So meaning the magic the magic is weakening for everybody. So he's not strong enough to like get this much damage healed anymore. Yeah. And the fairy just cried, "She took my wings." And Farah knew that the fairy was going to die. So she got to eye level with the fairy, holding its hands. And she kept whispering, "It'll be all right. It'll be all right." And it turned to her and said, "My wings. You'll get them back. You swear?" "Yes." And the fairy's eyes closed, and Tamlin uttered a prayer. But even after the body went limp, Farah didn't let go of the fairy's hands for a while, just kept stroking his hair. It was only when Tamlin tugged on her, she had no idea how long she had been sitting there, and he's like, "Farah, it's okay, let go. We can't leave him here." "I know, I was gonna walk you up first before I bury him." "I want to go with you." "No, I have to do this alone." But also he asks, "Why? You dislike our kind on a good day, and after Andres. Why? Like, why even show any sympathy for this fairy? Like, you freaking hate fairies. You literally killed a fairy in the woods out of spite. Just because it's a fairy, right?" And she said, "Because I wouldn't want to die alone. Because I would want someone to hold my hand till the end. And even a while after that. I guess that's something everyone deserves, fairy or human. I regret what I did to Andres. I regret that there was such hate in my heart. And I wish I could undo it. And I'm very sorry." Tamlin said nothing, but he carried the fairy downstairs to be buried. And I guess in order to try and connect with Farah after her apology, the two guys decide to lift her spirits by taking her on a little picnic the next day. And as slow and as painful and as weird as it sounds, this is the beginning of honestly a love story. So through the next couple chapters, Tamlin is showing Farah all the things in life that he's taken for granted, the beautiful meadows, the ponds that are filled with not water, but like silvery liquid that was thick and you could cup it in your hands and it felt like you were cupping, I don't know, stars. The grass is so soft, it felt like cuddling your favorite dog. And seeing Farah happy seemed to make Tamlin happy, and even Lucian noticed. And Farah was snappy. Like, she's not the type to be like, "Oh my god, my high lord." Like, she's the type to call Tamlin and Lucian out when they're being weird. And I guess they weren't used to being made fun of all the time. So when she made fun of them, they would just laugh their asses off, and it would kind of make her smile to see them laugh. And she learned a little bit about Lucian too from Tamlin. Lucian is the youngest son of the High Lord of the Autumn Court. The youngest of 7 brothers. The Autumn Court is cutthroat. Beautiful, but the brothers see each other only as competition, since the strongest inherits the title, not the eldest. It's the same throughout Prythian. Lucian never cared to be crowned High Lord. He loved making friends with sons of other High Lords and with women who were a far cry from the nobility. He fell in love with a fairy his father considered to be inappropriate for his bloodline. Lucian didn't care. His father had her executed in front of Lucian.
Jeez, man. Come
His
on.
2 older brothers held him down and forced him to watch. Lucian left, cursed his father, abandoned his title, abandoned his name, and walked out. Without his title protecting him, his brothers wanted to eliminate him. 3 of them went out to kill him. Only 1 came back. Lucian killed 2 of his brothers? He killed 1. I killed another one that came into my territory. I claimed Lucian as my own, named him my emissary, and he's good at talking to people across the courts, which I find to be difficult. Has he ever had to deal with his own family? Yes, of course. His father never apologized, and his brothers are too frightened of me to ever harm him, but he's never forgotten what they did to her, or what his brothers tried to do to him. Farah even opened up about her own father and losing their wealth. He was, this merchant. They were rich, but they had generations of debt. And he got into this get-rich-quick scheme, put their money on a bunch of ships, and then they lost it all, right? Then they move into a cottage when she's 14. She has to learn to hunt. And then, that's kind of it. Later, things get better for the 2 because she sees the gallery, and Tamlin is shocked as he watches Farah just swell with emotion over these paintings on the walls. He didn't know humans were capable of, having such emotions.
Painting?
Yeah, she was crying looking at paintings. And she whispered just a weak thank you. And he said, "Come to the gallery whenever you want." So weeks passed while Farah was painting. She refused to let anyone see her works. And maybe it was painting, maybe it was the time, but the words of the surreal are getting louder in her ears. Stay with the High Lord, you will be safe. And so that's what she did. And it felt nice, okay? She's fallen in love. Tamlin was becoming someone that she was happy to talk to. Sometimes they would just spend hours near each other in comfortable silence. She asked him once, why even do all of this? And he responded, because your human joy fascinates me. The way you experience things in your lifespan so wildly and deeply and all at once, it's entrancing. And I'm drawn to it even though I know I shouldn't be. Even though I know I should try not to be. And with that, he kissed her on the cheeks. And she was like, ooh, do more, but he didn't, okay? And then when he left, she craved his warmth, okay? Something just changed between them. He even wrote her a poem with all the crumbled up piece of paper of words that she didn't know. Remember, she crumbled it up in the beginning? Mm-hmm. And he wrote her a poem using all of those words, and he read it to her. And for that, and because of him, she said that was the first time she laughed, a real laugh. And it felt like all those years that she had hardened herself, it just shattered it all open again. With that one laugh. It was a dirty, naughty poem. Let's just say that. Okay?
What?
Yeah. Tamlin even opened up about his own parents. My father was as bad as Lucian's. Worse. My older brothers were just like him. They kept slaves, all of them. Human slaves. I couldn't bring myself to harm you or your family. I didn't want to be just like them. And so that's why he offered her the loophole. Thank you. What about your mother? My mother loved my father deeply. Too deeply. She would never say an ill word against him. I never wanted the title. My brothers would never have let me live to adolescence if they had suspected that I wanted the High Lord title. So from the moment that I was old enough, I joined the army to train. My purpose was to serve my father or whoever, whichever brother got his title. Fighting and killing were about the only things I was good at. I trained, and my power kept growing, and I couldn't hide it. Fortunately, or unfortunately, my family were all killed by the High Lord of an enemy court. I was spared for whatever reason.
Which one?
We'll soon find out. So that's how you became High Lord? It was a rough transition. Many of my father's courtiers defected to other courts rather than have a warrior beast snarling at them. Well, then they're idiots. You kept these lands protected from the blight when it seems like others haven't fared so well. They're all idiots. So basically, they're like, these guys didn't like that he's the High Lord because it's all about politics, but this is just like a warrior, basically. Like, he was never trained in politics, he never cared for it. So that's why he has Lucian as his emissary, right? And as they walked back into the garden back home, Tamlin's whole energy shifts, and he tells her, stay hidden, no matter what you overhear, do not come out. And with that, he was gone. So she ducked behind like a tree, and she saw Tamlin and Lucian talking to someone, but there was no one on the other side. It's like they're talking to the air.
When they're walking, all of a sudden,
yeah.
he's like, hide.
Yeah.
And they're
I guess
talking
he saw Lucian talking to someone.
Oh, he tells her to hide.
Yeah. They're like far enough, I guess, where they didn't sense them. So she gets closer and she hides. And there was a voice, like a voice coming from whoever they're talking to. And the voice says, your continued behavior is garnering interest at the court. She's begun wondering why you haven't given up. She's also wondering why 4 Naga wound up dead not too long ago. Lucian tries to be the one, he's the middle guy. Tamlin is not like the other fools. If she expected bowed heads, she's more of an idiot than I thought. Speak so ill of she who holds your fate in your hands. With one word, she could destroy this pathetic estate. Tamlin says, tell her I'm getting sick of cleaning up the trash she dumps on my borders. She sets them loose as gifts. Reminders of what will happen if she catches you trying to break the terms of... And Lucian interrupts, he's not. Now get out. We don't need you defiling our home. Thought you had a heart of stone, Tamlin. You certainly keep a host of fear inside you. Don't worry, High Lord. All will be right as rain soon enough. Lucian said, burn in hell, and the thing was gone. The voice was gone. Tamlin came out to get Farah, and Lucian was already questioning her. What did you hear? Nothing, I swear. Nothing I understood anyway. Who was that? Tamlin says, there are certain fairies in Prithian that inspire the legends that you humans are so afraid of. And the 2 men told her they would see her at dinner, and they left her contemplating what the is going on here, and what the is she, okay? Why does everybody keep referencing a she? Now let's talk about Fire Night. It's called Kalanmai. It's a spring ceremony with bonfires. And essentially it's to help create the magic that regenerates the land for the year ahead. So the fairies, they soak magic from earth. So now it's like the festival to give back to the earth. It's like harvest season, okay? So Farah asked how they create the magic, and he said, there's a ritual, but it's very fairy. He also mentioned that she's not invited to the ceremony. So the day the festival came around, literally everybody, Alice, all the other servants, everyone was leaving. She's gonna be alone in the house. And Farah asked Tamlin if she could go or if she could at least see, and he refused. He told her sternly, go to your room, lock your doors, set up a trap.
What?
Just do it. Don't come out till morning. She watched him leave, and she could hear the drums beating faster and faster. She could see this giant bonfire from afar, like really afar. She would have to take a horse to get there. Just getting bigger and bigger, and the drums, they were getting interesting. Like the drums were almost calling to her. The drums, it felt like they were inside of her. Like she's going crazy. She just wants to get closer and closer to these goddamn drums. So by 10 p.m., I can't do it. I gotta go clubbing. I gotta dance. That's how she feels. She hesitantly leaves the room, walks out, gets on a horse, follows the incessant beating of the drums, and when she gets to the bonfire, it's spectacular. I mean, it's a party. Nothing terrifying. No human sacrifices. Why is she not allowed to be here? Everyone's dancing. Okay, what's the problem? Some fairies don't even have masks on, which means that they've traveled from other courts to this party. And then she felt someone grasp her arm tightly. She turned around. 3 fairies were staring at her. Human woman, we've not seen one of you in a while. She tried to pull her arm away, but the grip was tight. What do you want? Just some fun on fire night. And with that, they start dragging her towards the woods.
You're trying to rape her? Oh my.
The drumming is too loud for anyone to even hear her. She tries to stand her ground and she's like, leave me alone. And they say, bold statement coming from a human on fire night. Once the ritual is performed, we'll have some fun, won't we? A treat. Such a treat to find a human woman here, huh? She's like, get your hands off me. And they drag her further into the woods. It's like game over time. And they shove her onto the ground. And before she can hit the ground, hands catch her. Then a velvety, smooth voice. There you are. I've been looking for you. Farah kept her eyes on the 3 fairies, and their eyes went wide with fear. Thank you for finding her for me. Enjoy the ritual. And the fairies ran off. And Farah looked up to thank him, and there was the most beautiful man that she had ever seen. Okay?
Oh my God.
He was.
Here we are.
He was.
Here we are.
He was sensual. He was grace. He was sophistication. He had short black hair. He had raven-like features. They were sharp. He had these violet eyes that were almost... There were a lot. He had no mask. He was just dripped in like a tuxedo, like a velvet tuxedo, okay? And he dripped charisma, but also power. And those two are lethal together. He's wearing all black, and it was so cut close to his body, she could just see how lean and muscular this guy is. What's a mortal woman doing here on fire night?
Why are these high lords so interested in a mortal human?
Yeah.
Why?
I know. My friends bought me. And who are your friends? 2 ladies. You're welcome for saving you. Strange, though, for a mortal to be friends with 2 fairies. Aren't humans usually terrified of us? Aren't you supposed to keep on your side of the wall? I've known them my whole life. Nothing to fear. And yet, they brought you here to the Great Rite and abandoned you. They went to get refreshments. I'm afraid it's going to be a while for them to return. In the meantime, may I escort you somewhere? No. Enjoy the rite, then. Try to stay out of trouble. And she blurted as he's walking away, you're not part of the spring court? And he said with the cockiest smile, do I look like I'm part of the spring court?
Dang.
Because he's not wearing a mask, you know?
Damn. Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Who are you then, huh?
Then why are you here then? Because the monsters have been let out of the cages tonight, no matter what court they belong to. So I may roam wherever I wish till dawn. And he leaves. And soon Farah runs into Lucian, who is beyond pissed. He literally plops her on his shoulder and runs back to the house. Literally runs so fast. It's like Edward Cullen from Twilight. Yeah, and he plumps her down on her bed, and he's like, it's the Great Rite. If Tamlin had found you... Didn't anyone tell you anything? No. Fire Night signals the official start of spring. We must regenerate magic for our crops for the year. Each of the 7 lords performs every year. Tonight, Tam will allow great, terrible magic to enter his body. It will take control over his mind, body, and soul and turn him into a hunter. And the only purpose for him tonight is to find a maiden. From their coupling, magic will be released and spread into the earth where it will regenerate life for the year to come.
Okay, what is he doing? He's turning evil tonight?
He's turning into a pure beast and someone tonight, okay? And he says he won't be the fairy you know tonight. He won't even know his own name. Magic will consume him and replace him with just one thing. Need. Who's the maiden? No one knows till it's time. Tam hunts down the white stag and kills it as a sacrificial offering, and then he makes his way to the sacred cave where he finds a path of fairies waiting for him. He gets to choose. It's an honor to be chosen. Tamlin's instincts will choose the maiden, and once he's made his choice, we're all free to mingle. Though it's not nearly as important, our dalliances will help the land too. You're lucky that I found you when I did. He would have smelled you and he would have claimed you, and it wouldn't have been the Tamlin in the cave that you know. I don't think you would have liked it.
I mean, that's the issue though. Like, you gotta tell someone straight up what's dangerous outside instead of like, don't go outside.
Yeah.
And they're gonna go outside.
They're gonna go outside.
Yeah. Like, if you tell them if you go outside, you get raped by every single person.
Yeah.
Then you won't go outside.
If you tell me there's a zombie outside, why the would I go outside?
Exactly.
I'm gonna stay inside. But if you're like, don't go outside, I'm going to a party. I'm going to the party.
Yeah.
Anyway, I should go.
Look at these lemon cakes and lemon.
These are burnt lemon cakes. They're
not.
supposed to be very yellow on top.
Oh, that corner one's pretty.
Yeah, the corner one.
look
Okay,
really nice.
so while these dry, right? Lucian says, I should go. He's gonna smell you in the crowd, and when he can't find you, I need to try and control him. Farrah felt sick. Like, the idea of him being a beast with no idea of right or wrong, but also the fact that he's gonna be with someone made her want to gag. And that night, she could barely sleep. So she scurried to the kitchen to get an apple, and she was about to head to paint when she ran into Tamlin, standing in the hallway.
What?
So this is like after the bonfire. And he didn't seem like himself. Like, he had paint all over his body and there were smears everywhere, indicating, people were touching him. And she tried to ignore him and pass, but he grabbed her and he pinned her up against the wall.
Wait, is he still a beast or no?
Like, it's kind of leaving.
Oh.
Yeah, he's like hungover.
Oh.
Yeah. And he's like, I smelled you. I searched for you. You weren't there. And he's like growling. I don't even know what that sounds. I smelled you. I searched for you. I don't know, okay? So she's like, let go. I searched for you, and you weren't there. When I couldn't find you, it made me pick another. And, well, okay, my mom is watching this, but basically, he pins her to the wall and describes what he would have done to her if she had been there and he could have picked her. It is really sensual, okay? But she was pissed, and she spat at him. Why would I want someone's leftovers? And he bit her on the neck. Obviously, not enough to really hurt her, but there was definitely going to be a mark for days. And she liked it. But she was annoyed. It was a confusing situation. Like, he just laid down with somebody else, but Farrah knew that she wanted him. So she slapped him across the face and went back to her room. The next morning...
This part is very confusing for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Also, he's like a 500-year beast. I saw a meme on Reddit that was like, when a 30-year-old starts dating an 18-year-old in a book. Gag. Disgusting. Call the police. When a 500-year beast starts dating a 19-year-old girl. I'm into it. Okay. The next morning, Farrah wore her hair up to breakfast because if he was going to bite her, he was going to stare at what he did to her. Lucian immediately noticed and choked on his wine. Where is the bruise from? I don't know. Ask him. He did it. Why does Farrah have a bruise on her neck from you? I bit her. We ran into each other in the hall after the rite, and she seemed to have a death wish, so if she doesn't want to listen to orders, I can't be held accountable for the consequences. Accountable? You cornered me in the hall like a rabbit. You're a fairy pig. And
Damn.
they both tipped over laughing, and she stormed out of there, went to her paint room, and for hours painted Tamlin and Lucian's face on pig bodies. Yeah, but just the thought of it made her kind of happy. And the love only grew. Eventually, Farrah even threw on a dress because it was the special occasion. She wanted to show Tamlin all of her work that she had been doing. It was basically as close as she could get to him. Basically, bearing her soul to him is letting him see her artworks. And after that very emotional moment, she turned to him and said, tell me there's some way to help you with the masks. Whatever threat has taken so much of your power, just tell me. Tell me what I can do to help. A human wishes to help a fairy. There's nothing I want you to do. Nothing you can do. Or anyone. It's my burden to bear. You don't have to bear it. I have to. What I have to face, what I have to endure, you will not survive. If I can't live here, I can't live here in ignorance if something's happening. If you don't want me to understand, would you rather me find somewhere else to live? No, I don't want you to live somewhere else. I want you here where I can look after you, where I can come home and know that you're here, safe and painting. And that night, for the first time, Farrah did not lock her door. Anyway, she finds out that Tamlin can glamour people in his court, so he can basically throw glamour over Farah, and that's why the creepy, invisible voice didn't see her. But he can only do it to his court. So he can turn someone from Spring Court into a wolf. He can hide someone from Spring Court, make them invisible for a second, or as long as he wants. Okay. Does that make sense? That's why the beast in the garden didn't see her.
Beast?
Yeah, like the invisible beast thingy in the garden couldn't see her because he glamoured her. But he still told her to hide just in case. Oh. But he made her invisible.
Oh, but he also made the beast invisible?
So kind of, yes. To her. Only to her. Okay. So they could see her. And if she had seen it, the beast is called an attar. If she had seen it, she would have literally pissed her pants. What? It's like the creepiest. It's like literally like very creepy. Okay, very creepy vibes. Just very scary. Think of like your worst nightmare. Think of like a giant four-legged creature in the back rooms climbing on the ceilings. Yeah. And then summer solstice came around where Farah had fairy wine for the first time, and it was intoxicating. Like, it made her dance. Like, she had no inhibitions. She was just dancing to Tamlin playing an instrument, and he was really good at it. She said it was like a million fireworks exploding inside of her. The music felt like it was calling her. Like, she felt free. She danced with Tamlin all night long. I mean, they're like falling in love with each other. And he said he kept saying her name. He wasn't even trying to get her attention. It sounded like he just simply liked to say her name, the way that it rolled off his tongue. And it was like the happiest moment of her entire life. And it just kept going until lunch that day. Because lunch was going to be killed. Because Lucian is a vibe killer sometimes. Tamlin and Farah are like two high schoolers in love, and Lucian coughs at lunch. Not to be the bearer of bad tidings, but my contact at the Winter Court managed to get a letter to me. The Blight took out 24 of their younglings, and kids are really hard for fairies to have. All gone. Burned through their magic, then broke apart their minds. No one in the Winter Court could do anything. No one could stop it once it turns its attention on them. Their grief is unfathomable. Other courts are being hit, though. Night Court, of course, manages to remain unscathed from the Blight. The Blight just keeps traveling further and further south. Is the Blight really capable of killing children? Tamlin spoke. The Blight is capable of hurting us in ways. And in a swift motion, the whole house went silent. Tamlin was standing, claws drawn out. Lucian swiftly moved Farah to the curtains, like near the windows and by the curtains, and they were glamoring her to make her invisible. Once that was done, Lucian stood casually in the corner, looking out the window, and Tamlin sat back down in his chair and continued casually eating. And then they heard footsteps, casual, as if whoever was visiting had all the time in the world. Turned the corner, and he appeared. No mask. The evil, ruthlessly beautiful man from the Fire Night. The one with the black hair, the velvet suits, the raven-like features, ready to just dig his claws into your neck with an impeccable smile on his face, just dripping charisma. This is what he looks like. The grace and sophistication just oozed out of this guy, and he smirked and he faced Tamlin. Hi, Lord. What do you want, Rhysand? That's his name. His name is Rhysand, but he goes by Rhys, like some people call him. Rhysand? Come on now, Tamlin. I don't see you for 49 years and you start calling me Rhysand. Only my prisoners and enemies call me that. I hope I'm not interrupting. What are you doing here, Rhys? I want to check up on you. I want to see how you're faring. What a pity that you must endure the brunt of it, Tamlin, and even greater pity that you're so resigned to your fate. You might be stubborn, but this is pathetic. How different the High Lord is from the brutal war band leader of centuries ago. Lucian snapped. What do you know about anything? You're just Amarantha's whore. We get a name. Amarantha. Who the f*** is Amarantha? Her whore I might be, but not without my reasons. At least I haven't bided my time amongst the hedges and flowers while the world has gone to hell. If you think that's all we've been doing, you'll soon learn otherwise. Little Lucian, you certainly gave us all something to talk about when you switched to spring. Such a sad thing to see your lovely mother in perpetual mourning. So Lucian's mom is the only one that misses him. And he says, watch your mouth. Is that any way to speak to a High Lord of Prythian? And yeah, Farah's heart stopped. No wonder the other fairies at Fire Night were terrified of him. And Lucian says, this isn't the Night Court. You have no power here, so clear out. Amarantha's bed is growing cold. He laughs, but before Farah could even blink, he's right in front of Lucian's face, like he's fast. I was slaughtering on the battlefield before you were even born. Besides, who do you think taught your beloved Tamlin the finer aspects of swords and females? You can't truly believe he learned everything from his father. Basically saying he taught Tamlin how to fight, so he's better. And Tamlin finally interrupts. Save it for another time, Rhys. You'll see me soon enough. She's already preparing for you. Given your current state, I can safely report that you've been broken and will reconsider her offer. And as he's talking, Rhysand looks down to the table. Where's your guest? I sent them off when I sensed your arrival. And then Ferris saw it. Pure excitement flicker in his eyes for like 0.2 seconds.
In like whose eyes?
Rhys. Like a little kid getting a new toy for Christmas but trying to hide it. And then he spat. You dare glamour me. And immediately he was in front of Ferris' face. And he could see her.
What?
He's that powerful.
What?
I remember you. Seems like you've ignored my warning to stay out of trouble. Who, pray tell, is your guest? And Lucian spoke. My betrothed. Basically, my girlfriend. Oh, here I was thinking you still mourned your commoner lover after all those centuries. I knew you liked to stoop low with your lovers, Lucian, but I never thought you'd actually dabble with mortal trash. The Lady of Autumn Court will grieve indeed when she hears of her youngest son. If I were you, I would keep your new pet away from your father. Rhysand pried the knife out of Farah's hands because she's holding a dinner knife. He pried it, threw it across the room, and he tells her, if you were wise, you would be screaming and running from this place, from these people. It's a wonder you're still here, actually. Farah looked confused and Rhysand laughed loudly. Oh, she doesn't know. And Tamlin finally gets mad. You have seconds to get out, Rhysand. If I were you, I wouldn't talk to me like that. And with that, Farah's body was out of her control. It's magic, but not like magic, something more powerful. It felt like something or someone had invaded every bone, joint, muscle, cell in her body. It felt like he could even slow down how fast her blood was running through her or which direction. And her mind felt like someone was inside of it. She couldn't move. She couldn't even scream for help. Tamlin ordered Rhysand to let her go, and he's screaming, enough. And Rhysand just smiles. I forgot how human minds are so easy to shatter, like eggshells. Look how delightful she is. Look how she's trying not to cry out in terror. I'll be quick, I promise. Oh, she has the most delicious thoughts about you, Tamlin. And he goes on to describe all the nasty thoughts that she had of Tamlin and said, if it's any consolation, she would have been the one for you, Tamlin. And you might have gotten away with it. A bit late, though. She's more stubborn than you are. And with that, the invisible claws released her, and she fell to the floor, and she tried to keep herself from vomiting, screaming, sobbing herself, like everything at once. And Rhysand turns to the guys and said, Amarantha will enjoy breaking her, almost as much as she'll enjoy watching you as she shatters her bit by bit. And the two guys froze. Tamlin looked different. She had never seen him like this, so vulnerable and so weak before. And he dropped his head and said, please. Please, what? Don't tell Amarantha about her. Why not? I'm her whore. I should tell her everything. Please, beg, and I will consider. Tamlin dropped to his knees and bowed his head on the ground. Lower. Farah wanted to cry with rage because, like, what the f*** is happening? And he turns around to Lucian and says, you too, fucks boy. And with that, Lucian drops to his knees and touches his forehead on the ground. Farah wanted to kill this man in front of her. And then he asks, are you doing this for your sake or for hers? You're far too desperate, Tamlin. It's off-putting. Becoming High Lord has made you so boring. What's your name, love? Farah didn't want to respond, but she knew that if she waited too long, he would just invade her mind again. So she blurted the first name that she could think of, a village friend of Nesta's. Claire Bador. Wow, this is entertaining. It's the most fun I've had in ages, actually. I'm looking forward to seeing you three under the mountain. I will give Amarantha your regards. And he left. Not by the door, but just like vanished into the room, like into thin air. That night, Farah cried in her room, skipping dinner, and Tamlin snuck in with his head bowed and he was apologizing. I'm sending you home. What? No, what about the treaty? I've taken on your life debt. Should someone come inquiring about the broken laws, I will take responsibility for Andres' death. No, please, did I do something wrong? You did nothing wrong. You were perfect. Then why do I have to go? Because there are people who will hurt you, Farah. Hurt you because of what you are to me. And I thought I would be able to handle them, to shield you from it, but after today I can't. You need to go home. You'll be safe there, far from here. Farah argued that she could hold her own, but he refused to budge. She tried screaming, and she's like saying, home is no home, it was hell. Like, I want to stay with you. Treaty or no treaty, blight or no blight, I want to stay. There's no debate. Let me help you. No. So you're sending me away because you think that I'm useless in a fight? I'm sending you away because it makes me sick thinking about you in their hands. And so she asks how long she's going to be sent away for, but Tamlin won't give her an answer. He promised that she would come back eventually, but she didn't even know if she trusted that answer. So that night, they spent all night doing it. Yeah. It was
that the first time?
She's leaving tomorrow, okay? It was raw, passionate, exactly what she thought it would be. She fell asleep in his arms, and the next morning they did it more, and then he told her to pack her bags because she's skedaddling. She held back tears, and he whispered in her ear, I love you. And she let a tear fall from her eyes and fell asleep. She packed her bags. She really hates goodbyes, okay? So everyone seemed not just sad to let her go, but there was just something. Lucian stared at Tamlin while watching Farah get loaded into the carriage, and he muttered, I thought you were smarter than this. You're not even going to give her a few more days? Just a few, before you send her back to that human cesspit? It's not up for debate, Lucian. Farah would later remember those words and think about it nonstop, but for now she was so focused on leaving Tamlin, she was so sad. And he came up to the carriage. Remember what I told you, the mortal realms remain safe. And before he stepped away, he looked at her and he said, I love you. And she opened her mouth, but her throat felt stuck, because what if she never saw him again? What if he never came back to her? She would die. He would live forever. And what if saying it just made him feel more obligated to come find her? She didn't want to be another burden in his life. And pride, ego, for all those reasons, she said nothing, and the carriage moved on. When she got back home, it was the opposite of what she thought. It was a mansion. Okay, not as big as Tamlin's, but close. Servants were waiting for her, and there her family was, dressed to the nines of finest silks and jewels, dripping in money. And Tamlin didn't just take care of them, he gave them everything they could have ever wanted. They were like the richest people in town. Elaine was over the moon. She loved her life. She loved the fact that Farah was back from meeting their now dead wealthy aunt who passed on even more money. The father seemed happy, but Nesta was as cold as ever. Her eyes were squinting in cold, analyzing suspicion every time she spoke to Farah. But Farah could care less. Her whole mind was occupied with thoughts of Tamlin, if he was going to be okay, what was going to happen to him, what about the blight, when is she going to see him again? And the next few days felt like a blur. Everyone around them, socialites, the wealthiest of the wealthy, they were back in their regular circles. Elaine didn't even seem to register that they had a poor period. Like a time where all these people had turned their backs on them. But Nesta wasn't the one to forget. She was no longer, Nesta is interesting. So she went from loving her socialite life to being this wealthy, amazing person, and then she went poor, and she hated everything about being poor, and she despised it so much. But now that she's back to being rich, the idea that the same people who turned their backs on her a couple years ago are now fawning over her because she's rich again, it disgusted her to her core. And so she's just fucking miserable, okay? Her dad is so busy throwing a giant ball, just blowing money. They're like, we need to throw a ball in Farah's honor to find her a suitor, to welcome her back into the socialite circle and she's making her debut as one of the wealthiest women in the area. Elaine told her a few things. First, the Bador family was slaughtered. Clara Bador, remember the name she gave to Reese?
Oh, what?
And she's like, what? The whole Bador family was slaughtered. Nesta hasn't been taking it well. Claire was her best friend. Claire's body was never recovered. Everyone in the house was dead. Their family, their workers, everyone. We're going to come back to this. But Farah also found out that Nesta came to look for her when she left for her aunt's house. She went to look for you, you know? Nesta? Yeah, she went out for about a week. She said her carriage broke down and she came back. Later that day, Farah tried to talk to Nesta about her time at her aunt's. Trying to make it, oh, I learned how to cook that when I was at Aunt Ripley's. But Nesta cut her off. It was just the two of them. There is no Aunt Ripley. Farah's breath stopped. Your beast's little trick didn't work on me. Apparently, it's not iron that scares them, but it's iron will is all it takes for glamour to not work.
Iron will?
It's like a saying for your will is so strong. You know what I mean? So I had to watch Father and Elaine go from sobbing in hysterics to nothing. I had to listen to them talk about how lucky we were to have gone to this made-up aunt's house. I thought I had gone mad, but every time I would look at that painted part of the table, at the claw marks underneath, and I knew it wasn't in my head. Elaine said that you went to visit me, though, or tried to, at the aunt's house. He stole you in the night, claiming some nonsense about a treaty, and then went on as if it never happened. It wasn't right. You went after me? To Prithian? I got to the wall. I couldn't find a way through.
Wow.
I hired that mercenary from town to bring me a week after you were taken. I used the money from the pelt. She was the only one that seemed to believe me what happened to you. You did that for me? It wasn't right. What happened? What happened to Thomas? Did he take you? I realized he wouldn't have gone with me to Prithian to save you. And there, Farah really looked at her sister for the first time. The woman who had never spent a day in the forest had gone to the border to find her. Like, she was filled with icy rage from what happened in her life, but underneath it all, like, Farah was her Elaine. She just didn't show it. There was just some sort of loyalty that ran deep there. And all Farah managed to say is not even I love you, is not even thank you, but Thomas never deserved you anyway. And Nesta gave a small smile and said, tell me everything that happened. And so Farah did, and it was Nesta's urging that Farah actually decided she had to go back for Tamlin.
What?
Whatever happened, she had to go back. She tried to fill the others in on what happened, Elaine and her father. She warned them of the blight, how Spring Court was the closest and Tamlin was holding out for as long as he could, but once that blight took over, who's to say when it's going to come down to mortal lands? And there's a woman, a fairy named Amarantha, who seems to be controlling the blight. Then she packed her bags, hopped on a horse, and Nesta told her, we don't need you here. And this time, it wasn't an insult. It was her pass to leave forever. It was a key to freedom. Don't look back. I'm telling you right now, we can take care of ourselves. They can lie. Fairies can lie. Iron doesn't bother them one bit. Ashwood seems to be the only thing that works. Sell all the jewels that I brought back with me in the carriage. Buy as much Ashwood as possible. What do you think you can even do to help? He's a High Lord. You're a human. I don't care. I've got to try. Nesta, there's a better world out there, waiting for you to find it. If I ever get the chance, if things are ever better, if they're safer, I'm gonna find you again. Don't bother. I'm not particularly fond of fairies. And I'd like to see what else is out there. See where I can make a name for myself. So basically, this is like their goodbye. And with that, Farah was off to the border. Finding the border was pretty easy. She could smell the metallic radiating off the wall, but the problem was getting in. She went for miles along the border, touching it, until finally there was like this soft opening. She mushed her horse through it and sped as far as she could till she reached Tamlin's manor, and nobody was there. The whole place had been wrecked. There was blood splattered all over the walls. It was an abandoned mansion. Had she dreamed it all? It almost felt like it. She ran inside, trying to move as quickly and as quietly as possible, trying not to get emotional at the scene because whoever took Tamlin, people put up a fight. She had to believe that they were still alive. And then a figure was in the corner. And they froze. And she froze. Whoever that figure was could smell her. And they turned slowly. And she saw, Alice, you can't be here, Farah. You were told to stay away. Is he alive? Where's Tamlin? Yes, but, and Lucian? Alive as well. Please just tell me everything. What happened? Alice is still packing her bags. Whatever food left over in the kitchen, she's packing it. And she's telling the story. She took him under the mountain. Farah already knew who she was, but Alice whispered. Why? Who is she? What is she? Please just tell me. Just give me the truth. You want the truth? She took him for the curse. Because the 7 times 7 years were over, he hadn't shattered her curse. She summoned all the High Lords to her court to make them watch her break him. What is the curse? Amarantha is the High Queen of this land, the High Queen of Perinthian. Wait, no, there's no queens or kings here. It's the High 7 Lords rule Prithian. That's how it used to be. 100 years ago, when she appeared as an emissary in these lands from Highburn, she went from court to court charming the High Lords, talking of more trade between Prithian and Highburn. The never-fading flower, they called her, and for 50 years, she claimed them all one by one. Amarantha's story is a legend amongst our kind, a nightmare. She was the king of Hyburn's most lethal general. She fought on the front lines, slaughtering humans and any high fae who dared to defend them. But her own little sister, Slithia, fell in love with a mortal warrior, Jurian. Jurian commanded mighty human armies. Slithia loved him. She was too blind to realize that he was using her to gain information about Amarantha's forces. Amarantha begged her sister to leave Jurian, but she refused. Amarantha couldn't bring herself to kill Jurian because it would only cause pain to her sister. She's a warrior who delights in torture and killing, but she loved her sister. What happened? Jurian betrayed her. Slithia tortured her, crucified her with ashwood, butchered her, left pieces of her for Amarantha to find. Her wrath could have brought down the skies themselves. The king of Highburn told her to stand down. Had he not, she would have destroyed everything. Later, Amarantha had her confrontation with Jurian, and since then, she has hated humans with a rage that you cannot imagine. She has butchered her own human slaves rather than set them free once the treaty was signed. Centuries later, the High Lords believed her when she said the death of her sister had changed her, and all she wanted was to form an alliance of trade between Highburn and Prythian. But we soon realized all she wanted was Prythian for her own. At that point, it was too late to stop her. So basically, she went from court to court, seducing all these High Lords and promising them all these crazy things and selling them this story. She's cunning and cruel and manipulative, and she was able to use the King of Highburn's spells to trap the High Lord's powers. There's no blight. She's like soaking the power away from them. She's literally leeching off of them. Their powers.
How did she do that?
So the King of Highburn has a spell that she used, and she stole the spell from the King of Highburn.
So is she becoming more powerful?
That's the thing about magic. She has her own powers, but she can't tap into the High Lord's powers yet, at least not safely, without the High Lords being able to access them too. But the only reason the High Lords are listening to her is because she's the key holder of their powers. But she can't utilize the High Lord's powers. So she has like this huge reserve of all their powers, but she can't use it. But she has the power of politics. Because she has something that they all want back desperately, she has the power. She's good at gaining trust, and once she did that, she started stealing the High Lord's magic and power from them, leaving them with only the basic elements of their magic. Your Tamlin, what you saw of him here was a shade of what he used to be, the power that he used to command. And with all the High Lord's power greatly decreased, Amarantha wrestled control of Prythian from them. For 49 years, Prythian has been her slave. She is waiting for a moment to break the treaty and take all the human lands and territories. Now, we call her the Deceiver. She who trapped the 7 High Lords and built her palace under the sacred mountains in the heart of our lands. But the sickness, the blight. Tamlin said the blight took the powers. Girl, don't be foolish. She is the sickness. There is no blight but her. She sent her creatures to attack to test what power Tamlin had left. It amused her. You could have been the one to stop her. You could have freed him and his power had you not been blind to your own stupid heart, humans.
Wait, what?
I didn't know. Of course you didn't know. It was part of the curse. What curse? Tamlin and Amarantha knew each other from before she came to Prythian. His family had been tied to Highburn, and they had known each other since Tamlin was a child. Amarantha grew to desire Tamlin, to lust after him, with her entire wicked heart. But Tamlin heard the stories. He knew what she had done to fairies and humans alike. He was wary of her, kept his distance, till she stole his powers. He refused to go to bed with her. She took Lucian's eye as punishment, carved it out with her own fingernail, then scarred his face and sent him back to Tamlin that way. He vomited when he saw his friend. After that, she hosted a masquerade under the mountain. All the courts had to be present. The entire spring court was to attend. Tamlin had us all go because he wanted to try and end the conflict with no violence. And when we were all assembled, Amarantha claimed peace could be had if Tamlin joined her as a lover and consort. He refused. He, in front of everyone, told her he would sooner take a human to his bed, sooner marry a human, than ever touch her. It cut deep. Amarantha's own sister chose a human over her. You can guess how that went. She said she was in a generous mood. In front of all the courts, she said she would give him a chance to break the spell that she put on him to steal his power. She said he had 7 times 7 years before she claimed him. And if he wanted to break her, he needed to find a human girl willing to marry him. But not any girl. A human girl with hatred in her heart for fairies. A human girl willing to kill a fairy. A fairy that had been one of his men, sent across the wall like a lamb to be slaughtered. If she killed the fairy unprovoked, if she killed the fairy for hatred alone, just as Jurian had done to her sister Slithia. So the treaty, all a lie, stupid girl. Andros was sent out as that day's sacrifice, not for some magical blight. He was a cure to save Prythian from Amarantha. Farah thought back to how the wolf let her kill it. It just stared at her. It's a fairy. Even with an ashwood arrow in it, it could have killed her before it died. It was a cruel joke. You humans loathe fairies so much it would have been impossible. But as long as the human told Tamlin she loved him and meant it with her entire heart before the time was up, the spell would have been broken.
Wait. You're saying if she said a simple I love you?
Yes, and she couldn't say it! Amarantha also knew that humans are preoccupied with beauty, thus bounding all of our faces in masks. It would be more difficult for a girl to look beyond his mask, beyond his fairy nature. Then she bound us so that none of us could say a single word about the curse. He couldn't tell you, none of us could. But the fact that I can right now means that it's too late. For decades, Tamlin sent his men out beyond the walls. Many didn't come back, some killed by human hunters, some killed by other fairies. It broke him to send his men to their death. For decades he stopped, just biding his time, fending off Amarantha's creatures. 3 High Lords have already fallen. Day Court, Summer Court, Winter Court. She keeps them under the mountain to torment them as she pleases. The other High Lords, they grovel at her feet, and they do everything she says. But at least they have the freedom to be in and out of the mountain. Our court was only allowed to remain here until Tamlin's curse ran out. He tried to break the curse, but he thought that if the human girl loved true, then bringing her here to set him free was another form of slavery. And if he thought if he did indeed fall in love with her, Amarantha would do everything she could to destroy the human girl. You could have broken it. All you had to say was you loved him and meant it with your whole useless human heart, and his power would have been freed. You stupid, stupid girl. I'm sorry. Tell that to Tamlin. He only had 3 days after you left before the curse was over. He let you go. She came here the moment the curse was over to seize him and the rest of the court, brought them under the mountain to be her subjects. Creatures like me are too lowly to even bring, though she's not above murdering us for sport. After the High Lords fell, creatures even too awful for the Night Court to accept flocked to her. She's gathering these creatures, building an army to take your world. Like the Atar? Yes, like the Atar. Alice, if Tamlin were freed, if he had his full powers, could he destroy Amarantha? I don't know. She tricked the High Lords through cunning, not force. She keeps their powers locked up inside herself. She can't use them. She can only access very little of those powers. But she has her own deadly powers, yes. But he's stronger, right? He is a High Lord. But none of that matters. She's taken him to be his slave. We will all wear these masks till he agrees to become her lover. And then, even then, he will never regain his full powers. She will never let him go. Farah begged Alice to take her to under the mountain, and for some reason Alice did. So they make that trek, and before they part ways, she warns Farah. It's suicide. She'll kill you. You're human. Your flesh is paper thin. You'll be lucky if she gives you a clean death. But if you want to try, don't forget these rules. Don't drink the wine. It's not like the stuff we had at Solstice. It'll do more harm than good. Don't make deals with anyone unless your life depends on it. And even then, consider whether it's worth it. And most of all, don't trust a soul in there. Not even your Tamlin. Your senses are your greatest enemy. They will be waiting to betray you. And there's one part of the curse, one thing, that she still does not want me to say. My bones are just crying just by mentioning of it. One part you have to figure out on your own. She doesn't want you to know. Keep your ears open, girl. Listen to what you hear. Think. Thank you. I will. Thank you for bringing me. It's a rare day indeed when someone thanks you for bringing them to their death. So Alice has these nephews that she really cares about. Like, her sister's dead or something, but she has nephews. And Farah tells her, once you retrieve your nephews, if you need a place to stay, cross the wall, go to my family's house, ask for Nesta. She's my older sister, she knows who you are, she knows everything, and she's going to shelter you in any way that she can. And they hold hands for a brief moment. And Alice tells her, stay alive. And with that, Farah walks into the cave to enter the palace under the mountain. And the deeper she walks, the more she realizes how in over her stupid human head she is. Like, this is the biggest mistake of her life. Even more when bony fingers slowly wrap around her shoulder. Her blood ran cold, and she looks to her side. That voice, it's Theodore. And she finally sees its face, and it's like nightmare fuel. Just leathery gray face with insane fangs, like just so long-limbed and tall. Hello. What's something like you doing here? Anyways, she was tugged through a labyrinth of the cave and thrown onto a cold marble floor, and she looked up, and there were people, some of them in masks. These are Spring Court people. Maybe they would be her allies, potentially, hopefully. And once she was slammed onto the ground, the whole room went quiet. And there on the black throne was Amarantha. She looks like this, I imagine. She has red gold hair, snow white skin, ruby lips, and she was beautiful, right? So beautiful. But something about her face was so cold, it was hard to call her beautiful. And next to her, Tamlin. And he was in his warrior's clothes, a golden mask, and he saw Farah, and he made no movement, no emotion in his face. He just stared. He looked unimpressed and bored. What's this? Just a human I found downstairs. Obviously, but why should I bother with her? Tell Her Majesty why you were sneaking around, why you came out of the old cave that leads to Spring Court. Tell her, you human filth. Farah stood up, but she couldn't bear to even look Amarantha in the eyes. She was shaking. I came to claim the one that I love. Oh, I've come to claim Tamlin, the High Lord of the Spring Court. A gasp rippled through the court, but Amarantha just laughed. She turned to Tamlin. You certainly were busy all those years. Developed a taste for human beasts, did you? His face didn't move. Oh, you are delicious. You let me torture that innocent girl to keep this one safe? You lovely thing. You actually made a human love you. Marvelous. Farah said, let him go. Give me one reason why I shouldn't destroy where you stand, human. You tricked him. He is bound unfairly. Perhaps I should have listened when she insisted she had never seen Tamlin before, or that she had never hunted a day in her life, or even killed a fairy through though her screams were delightful. I haven't heard such lovely music in ages. I should thank Rhysand for giving me her name instead of yours. And she looked behind Farah. Farah turned around, and there on the wall was the tortured, mutilated, chained-up body of Claire Bador. Remember the random village girl's name she gave? So Tamlin basically sat there pretending like this is Farah.
Oh my god. And they tortured her in front.
Farah could only stare. And basically she felt like she's the one that killed Claire.
Well, it's not only that, but you're next, boo-boo.
Yeah.
That's you next.
Yeah, you're going to be up on the wall right next to her. And also the fact that Tamlin let her be killed.
Yeah.
And Amarantha was quick to catch on. Do you still want to claim someone who would do that to an innocent human? Yes, I do. But when Amarantha asked if Tamlin loved Farah back, he looked at her and said, I've never seen her before ever. And he said, someone must have glamored her as a joke, probably Rhysand. Farah realized that Tamlin was trying to protect her even now. But Amarantha caught on. She laughed. Oh, that's not even a halfway decent lie. Could it be that you, despite your words, return the human's feelings? A girl with hate in her heart for our kind has managed to fall in love with a fairy whose father once slaughtered the human masses at my side. So Tamlin's dad was like BFFs with Amarantha. They both hated humans, and Amarantha wanted to Tamlin, which is kind of weird, right? And she says, oh, this is too good, too fun. Things have been awfully quiet since Claire decided to die on me, so killing you outright would be dull. Perhaps darling Claire had to die in order for me to have some true amusement with you. You came to claim Tamlin? I'll make a bargain. You complete 3 tasks of my choosing, 3 tasks to prove how deep that human sense of loyalty and love runs, and Tamlin is yours. Just 3 little challenges to prove your dedication, to prove to me that your humankind can indeed love true, and you can have your High Lord. And then she turns to Tamlin. Consider it a gift, High Lord Tamlin. These human dogs make our kind so lust blind. We lose all common sense. Better for you to see her true nature now. So basically telling Tamlin, I'm doing you a favor so that you can see how weak her love for you is, because humans are so fickle. But we don't see it as fairies because we just want to f*** a human. I want his curse to be broken too. I complete all 3 of your tasks and his curse is broken, and we and all of his spring court can leave here and remain free forever. Of course. I'll throw in another element. I'll give you a way out. You complete all the tasks, or you can answer one simple riddle anytime, solve the riddle, and the curse will be broken instantaneously. I won't even need to lift a finger, and he'll be free. Say the right answer and he is yours. You can answer at any time, but if you answer incorrectly, you're dead. And she pointed to Claire. And if I fail your tasks? If you fail, there won't be anything left of you for me to play with. In the meantime, you shall either remain in your cell or do whatever additional work I require to earn your keep. Is that agreed? Agreed. Good. Ator, give her a greeting worthy of my hall. And the Ator came and started to beat her up. Farah could hear her bones crunching and cracking. She was screaming in agony, and blood was flowing onto the floor. And then she was thrown into a cell, and it was like a dungeon cell. Dark, cold, nothing but coldness. There were guards, and randomly they would bring in moldy food, and then randomly there would be ear-piercing screams of torture coming from God knows where. She had no idea what time of day it was because they're under a mountain, there's no windows. She had nothing. She couldn't even open her eyes. They were swollen shut, and her nose was definitely broken. She was drifting in and out of sleep from the pain when the door opened. Lucian, have you lost your mind? What are you doing here? Are you okay? By Cauldron, look at you. I went back to the manor, and Alice told me about the curse, and I couldn't. You shouldn't have come here. Don't you understand what he sacrificed in getting you out? How could you be so foolish? Well, I'm here now, okay? I just had to tell him that I love him to see if it was too late. It was obviously too late. So you know everything, then. Well, at least we don't have to lie to you anymore. And with that, he put his hand on her nose and healed it to a degree. He couldn't heal her too much, otherwise they would know that someone came to help her. Are you stuck down here too? She summoned all the High Lords, even those who are allowed to come and go as they please. All 7 High Lords of Prythian are here and forbidden to leave until your trials are over. And then the guards were changing. Lucian had to leave. He vanished into the dim light, and what felt like for days, Farah dozed off till she was dragged back into the throne room by the guards. She was told her trials, her 3 tests, would be on the full moon. So it's going to take 3 months, 1 a month. But here's the kicker, she has no window, so she didn't even know if it's a full moon. Whatever. She stood before the queen and Tamlin again, and the queen taunted Tamlin, saying that Farah looked dreadful. But he didn't take the bait. He remained emotionless. I thought, I don't know your name, and we're going to be such close friends in the next 3 months. I should know your name. Farah remained quiet because her family, you know. Come on, pet. You know my name. Isn't it fair that I know yours? After all, you've already learned the consequences of giving false names. No response. Amarantha called for Rhysand to the front, and he stood next to Farah. This is the hot guy, okay? Is this the girl you saw at Tamlin's estate? And he looked bored, and he looked her up and down. I suppose. But did you or did you not tell me that that girl on the wall was the one you saw? Humans all look alike to me. And what about fairies? Do we all look alike? He gave a gracious bow, dramatic. Among a sea of mundane faces, yours is a work of art, Amarantha. Farah didn't believe him for a second. She wanted to snort. He had lied, but why? Why did he lie? What's her name, Rhysand? How would I know? She lied to me too. If you're inclined to play games, we can do this the fun way. Someone jerked Lucian to the front, and Amarantha ordered Rhysand to hold his mind, to extract Farah's name. Or Lucian had the chance to blurt it out, but of course he wouldn't. Rhysand remained calm. He had his hands in his pocket, and Amarantha taunted Lucian. I thought you learned your lesson, Lucian. Give me her name, or Rhysand will wipe out everything you were, turn your mind and yourself into dust. So basically, Rhysand only has a little bit of the power that he used to have as the High Lord of the Night Court, but he has ability to invade people's minds, and he can actually turn the mind into dust. So you are, for the rest of immortality, you're just like a drooling person. Like you lose everything. And that's like the ultimate fear of all the fairies. Like you'd rather die. Farah saw that Lucian's brothers, it's obvious to see them. They're Autumn Court. They've got the bright red hair. They're dressed like Autumn Court. Even his mother was there, and none of them said anything. None of them did anything to help. His mother seemed stressed, but in fact, his brothers seemed to enjoy it. They wanted his brother to turn into like a drooling piece of mess. Rasan got started, slowly, and a groan came out of Lucian, and immediately she screamed, Farah! My name is Farah. Rasan stepped back, and Lucian was returned to the crowd as Lucian, not as a drooling piece of mess. Farah. An old name from our earlier dialects. I promised you a riddle, so here it is, Farah. If you solve it, High Lord and all his court will immediately leave with my blessing. There are those who seek me in a lifetime, but we never meet, and those I kiss, but who trample me beneath ungrateful feet. At times I seem to favor the clever and the fair, but I bless all those who are brave enough to dare. By large, my ministrations are soft-handed and sweet, but scorned, I became a difficult beast to defeat. For though each of my strikes lands a powerful blow, when I kill, I do it slow. Farah felt desperate. It felt so close yet so far. They could all be free, but she had no answer and she can't answer wrong. So Amarantha told her, think on it, don't you? And back to the dungeon she goes. And then the first trial was here. Farah was led to a stadium, and think like Quidditch, but bigger and more opulent, like Hunger Games meets Quidditch opening ceremony night. The stands were filled with boisterous, loud fairies wearing rich, colorful colors. Like, you can distinctly see each of the courts. They have different attire. They look different, right? They were screaming, chanting in the arena, and in the middle was this mud maze. So she's like walking up towards it, and it drops down, and from the top she can see this crazy labyrinth. It's like built underground and it's like muddy. From the stadium seats, they have an overview so they can just look down, right? But when you're in the maze, you're gonna have no idea where you are. It's a maze. You turn and there's a dead end. What happens? We don't know. The smell of the mud, incredible. It made Farah's eyes water. The stench was nothing like she had smelt before. And then Amarantha started talking, and immediately the crowd went silent. I took the liberty in learning a few things about you. It was only fair, I think you'll like the first task. Go ahead. Look. And when she bent over the maze, she was thrown down. She was pushed down. And she continued. Rhysand tells me you're a huntress. Hunt this. Release it. And she had no idea what was going on. And Amarantha looked at her, cocked her eyebrow, and said, run. And then it appeared. A giant worm. And I'm talking 3 truckloads, like a giant worm with an enormous mouth filled with rows and rows of razor-sharp teeth, and it came for her. The body was like writhing as it's like fastly approaching her. Yeah, it's worming towards her. And Farah realized she was in the worm's den, and she was mother freaking dinner. She starts running, trying to get as much distance, and the crowd is cheering and booing, and she knew she could not outrun the worm for long. Any turn could turn to a dead end, and she'd be dead. She had to find somewhere to hide, something. So she threw herself into the smallest opening that she could find, hoping that the worm wouldn't find her, but she knew that the worm could easily break through the mud and crush her. She squeezed herself tighter and tighter until the opening opened up, and she was thrown into a pile of, God, it was like slime, like this smelly, like she's gagging. But underneath it, her ankle had hit something really pokey, like stabby. She reached down, and it was a skull. And there were bones. There was bones everywhere. She was probably in the worm's toilet, if you will. But oddly, this was one of the places where the crowd couldn't really see it, and she heard Amarantha scream, Farah, you're ruining everyone's fun. Come out now. Farah used the pile of bones to dig it into the sludge mud walls so that she could use it as a stepping stool to get out. And she had gathered a bunch of bones before she got out. And so she's thinking, okay, weapons, I need weapons. And then it hit her. She started breaking all the bones in half, so they're splintered on 2 ends. When you break a bone, it's like poking. And she started putting them into the mud, almost like creating a bed of bones. It's a trap. Mm-hmm. So if you land on that, you're gonna get stabbed everywhere and die. Mm-hmm. And people were confused. All the fairies are whispering, what is she doing? She's as good as dead, right? And her thing was, she thinks the worm is blind. She's not sure, but that's her bet. That's her guess, because the worm hasn't found her yet. So maybe it's because the smell of the is so strong. It's using scent to find her. So after she puts all of that down, she covers herself in all of his and mud. And basically, she's just a pair of blue eyes poking out. Yeah, and then she's staring at her trap, and she's got one little bone in her hand, and she's like, this is my only chance. And she heard a fairy whine, what is she doing?
Everyone can see her?
Yeah, okay. and she can see them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and a fairy is whining, what is she doing? And she looks up, and Rhysand is watching with a little smile on his face. She's building a trap. It relies on scent to see and Farah just became invisible. And she looks up at him, flicks him off, and starts heading for the worm. Because she's like, fuck that guy. I don't even like that guy. Fuck you, okay? And then she had to lure the worm. But the first part of the plan was to sneak up on it and run a spike through the neck to injure it a bit. And then while it was disoriented in pain, it would land on the spikes, killing itself, right? She had one chance, that was all. But when she couldn't find it, the whole crowd went silent before somebody laughed, and Lucian's voice filled the stadium. To your left! She hadn't seen it. And there to her left, there it was. So she ran as fast as she could. She stabbed it and then ran back, and it ran directly towards her. And she was able to leap across as far as she could, past the trap, and land into the pile. But before she landed, she felt like a snapping in her arm. The worm was biting at her arm. Just a tiny bit, like almost like a little bit on the arm, and considering its size, but she could see her own bone protruding out now. And then she braced for another bite, but she looked up, and the worm was dead on the spikes. First silence, and then cheering from the crowds. Farah slowly climbed out of the pit, and her arm was searing in pain, and every bone in her body was screaming. And she had the bone in her hand still, right? She had another bone in her hand. And when she looked up, she looked at Amarantha in the eyes, and she hurled the bone with all her strength. She's not trying to hurt Amarantha. There's no way she could. But the bone landed near Amarantha and splattered her in filth and mud. And all the fairies gasped. It went silent, and Amarantha smiled. Naughty, naughty. I suppose you'll be happy to learn most of my court lost a good deal of money tonight, Farah. Let's see. And she snatched a piece of paper up. Almost my entire court bet on you dying in the first minute. Some 5 minutes. And just one person said you would win. And her smile faltered, and she sat back on her throne, and Farah could see she was gripping her throne like her knuckles were white. She was pissed.
Who bet that? We don't know?
We know.
We do know?
Rhysand. I don't know why.
Yeah, why?
Yeah. And with that, she was thrown back in her prison dungeon, and she had a fever and puked nonstop for days. She wasn't allowed to shower. Her bones were protruding out. Her arm was broken. She's a human. She's probably 1 second away from an infection and imminent death. Are you kidding? Like all that mud and bacteria. She didn't know how long passed until a figure appeared. What a sorry state for Tamlin's champion. Go to hell, it was Rhysand. What would Tamlin say if he knew that his beloved was rotting away, burning up with a fever? Not that he can come here, not with his every move being watched. Go away. I came here to offer help, and you have the nerve to tell me to leave. Go away. You made me a lot of money, you know. I figured I would repay the favor. Let me see your arm. Oh, that's wonderfully gruesome. F you. Such words from a lady. Get out. Do you want me to heal your arm? At what cost? Ah, living with fairies has taught you some of our ways. I'll make a trade with you. I will heal your arm in exchange for 2 weeks of every month. 2 weeks of my choosing, you will live with me in night court. After this messy business trial, of course. No. No. Really? Get out. You turned down my offer. For what? You must be holding out for Lucian? He held you before, didn't he? Your nose? The way I see it, Farah, you have 2 options. First, the smartest, is to accept my offer, and the second is to refuse and place your life in Tamlin and Lucian's hands. Lucian might come to your aid in 5 minutes, perhaps 5 days. Perhaps he won't come at all. Between me and you, he's been keeping a low profile after his rather embarrassing outburst at your trial. Because he screamed to your left, you know? Amarantha is not exactly pleased with him. Tamlin even broke his delightful brooding to beg Lucian to be spared. She listened, of course, but only after she made Tamlin bestow Lucian 20 lashes. So it's a question of how much you're willing to risk for Lucian and your trust in him. Fever is the first sign of infection. Perhaps it's not connected. Perhaps you're just having a fever. Maybe the worm's mud isn't full of festering filth. I don't need to invade your thoughts to know that you know you're dying. Go to hell. He reached over, twisted the shard of bone in Farah's arms until she was screaming in pain, and when he was done, she's sweating, and she spat in his face. And before he left, she thought about it, and she thought about Tamlin. She would sell her soul. She would give up everything for him to be free, because that's how much she loved him. Wait. Yes? Just 2 weeks? Why? What are the terms? If I told you those things, there would be no fun then. 5 days. You going to bargain? 10 days. A week. A week it is, Farah. Then it's a deal. And then he grabbed her arm and healed her, and she felt new again. Her fever was gone, her head was clear. In fact, the mud was gone too. It felt like she had taken a nice long bath. And then when she looked down at her arm, all hell broke loose. There was an intricate tattoo going from her left elbow down to her hand. Everything was delicate, and in the palm of her hand was a large eye, a feline-looking eye staring at her. It was a tattoo. He basically branded her.
But that's also giving away what he did to her.
He wants everyone to know. He wants Tamlin to know.
What about the woman?
Amarantha cares more about Tamlin than Rhysand.
What?
And she starts freaking out. You didn't tell me this would happen. Make it go away. You humans are truly grateful creatures, aren't you? Unless this lack of gratitude and appreciation is because you fear a certain High Lord's reaction. I think I'll wait to tell him when the moment is just right. Rest up, Farah. And Farah knew she had fallen into his trap. He did this to rub it into Tamlin's face, to mess with him, to mark his possession over her, and it was sick. She felt creeped out by the eye, watching her every step, but she didn't have to worry for too long, because the guards came in and threw her into a marble great room with a bucket and a mop. Yeah, it's that wop. If it's not washed and shining by supper, we're to tie you to the spit and give you a few good turns over the fire. She started getting to work, but the water that she was cleaning with only got muddier and muddier. It was probably enchanted or something. It felt like some sort of sick magic. She was set up for a task that she would fail. She worked for God knows how long, making the place even dirtier than it was before, and finally the door swung open, and a woman walked in. Porcelain skin. She walked with grace and ease. A lady of high standing, clearly, and her red hair gave it away. High Lady of Autumn Court, Lucian's mom. She looked down at Farah. For giving her your name, in place of my son's life, my debt is paid. And then she walked out. She looked down, and the water in the bucket came out clean. The guards were annoyed that they couldn't torture her, and the next day she had another task. Whoever's room it was, the guard said that the owner spilled lentils into the fireplace. I don't even know what that means. And she had to clean it all out from all the ash. Like a fireplace is all ash, you know? But it's this impossible task. She worked for hours covered in ash, and they said the owner of this room would skin her alive if she didn't finish it. Well, she wasn't done, okay? And there was no nice Autumn Court lady to save her this time. And the door opened, and she's like, who owns this room? And are they really going to skin me? And she looks up. As wonderful as it is to see you, Farah, do I want to know why you're digging through my fireplace? It was Rhysand. The guard said that I had to clean out lentils from your fireplace, or else you would rip my skin off. Do I have you to thank for this amazing idea? No. Why were there lentils in my fireplace to begin with? Maybe it's one of your mistress's chores, I suppose. Maybe a test for you. She didn't seem pleased that you bet on me in my first task. And what could Amarantha possibly test me about? You lied to her about Claire. You knew very well what I looked like. Rhysand smiled and said, Amarantha plays her games and I play mine. It gets rather boring down here day by day. She let you out for fire night. I had my reasons to be out that night. Do not think, Farah, that it did not cost me. So she's very confused. Like, how whipped is he by Amarantha? Like, she doesn't understand his alliances. Mm-hmm. It's very confusing. Like, why would she lie? Why would he lie and say that this is Claire? That, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So she asks, how do you have such power still and the others don't, the other high lords? Mm-hmm. I thought she robbed you guys all of your abilities. Oh, she took my powers. This is just a remnant. This is the scraps that I get to play with. So we learned that Tamlin has more brute strength and he can shapeshift, and Rhysand has the ability to invade minds. This is what he was left with, and he is also a raven, so he can shapeshift into his beast form, which is like, has these terrifying big, almost like membraney bat-like wings. It's like horrifying and beautiful at the same time. And before Farah was returned back to the cell, he ordered the guards that she would partake in no more household chores, and they were pissed, but he was the High Lord of the Court of Night. Besides, he had other things planned for her. They might have been worse than the guard's test. She was forced by 2 of the Night Court fairies, servants of Rhysand's, to get her ready for the balls. They had a big party every night during her trials, one that she usually was never invited to, but now she was supposed to be Rhysand's guest. The servant fairies painted her entire body with midnight blue paint, the night court's color, symbolizing the night court. And then they put like sheer cloth over her private parts. It was like the most scandalous attire. She couldn't even say no.
Oh.
It's like a very sexy costume and it's really bizarre and it's like straight up just branding her for the night court vibe. And nobody would listen to her, so her whole body was painted, but you could totally see her boobs and everything, like everything on display. And later, Rysand revealed the paint smears if anyone touches her. So he knows if anyone touches her that night, which is giving me property vibes. Like, you know what I mean? I don't want anyone to touch my toy thing.
But you ate it up.
I was eating it up. For breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Then they walk into the ballroom and everyone is quiet. Rysand didn't touch her, but he was close enough to her and, you know, her whole attire. It was clear to everyone whose guest she was. The crowd moved to the side until they were both in front of Amarantha and Tamlin. Farah kept her head high, even though shame was like the only thing, because now even her tattoo was on display for Tamlin. And the queen spoke. "What have you done with my captive, Rysand?" "We made a bargain. 1 week with me at the night court every month in exchange for my healing services after her first task for the rest of her life." Everyone glanced because the implication was clear. He thought she was going to survive for a very long time after this.
Oh. Is Anna whatever is not going to be happy to hear that because she wants her dead.
She did a fake terse smile and just said, "Enjoy my party." And with that was night one of many parties, endless parties, all of which Rysand invaded her mind to make her drink the wine, essentially drugging her. So she doesn't remember much of any of the parties. She does know that in the morning she'll wake up and there's paint smeared off her hips, like her waist, but no private areas. Like no boobs, no chest, just kind of her waist area. It wasn't until Lucien snuck in to tell her the wine made her dance basically on Rysand, basically giving him a lap dance the whole party in front of everyone, including Tamlin, night after night. Yikes, yikes, yikes. Okay, and Lucien scolded her for making a deal with the devil, or should I say Rysand. And Farah is like, wait. First of all, let's get to the real stuff. Is Tamlin all right? The spell that Amarantha has on him. He's like, there's no spell, Farah. Hasn't it occurred to you that Tamlin is keeping quiet to avoid telling Amarantha which form of torment affects him the most? He's playing a dangerous game. We all are. Anyway, there were nonstop parties and a few revealing details. Farah had a conversation with Rysand before a party. "What do you want with me, beyond taunting Tamlin?" "Taunting him is my greatest pleasure. But you saved my life. And through your life, I saved Tamlin's." Basically, by saving her, he saved Tamlin. Why? That, Farah, is the real question, isn't it? And with that, they were at a party for Farah to be drugged and disgraced once again. But before the festivities, the court was quiet, waiting for Rysand. And in front of them, a high fae was sobbing on the floor. And the High Lord of Summer Court was standing next to Amarantha, staring like pale as a ghost. This Summer Lord tried to escape through the exit to Spring Court lands, and I want to know why. Rysand looked up. He wanted to escape to get to Spring Court, cross the wall into human territory. He had no accomplices, no motive beyond his own pathetic cowardice. "Shatter him, Rysand." And the High Lord gave a condescending bow at the queen, and then stared at the fairy on the ground. Rysand worked his magic, and the fairy's eyes went wide before blood leaked from his nose, and he plopped dead. And Amarantha was pissed. "I said shatter his mind, not his brain." "My apologies, my queen." Farah picked up a few interesting things. She knew others were involved. She saw the High Lord's face of Summer Court. He was probably involved. Rysand must have known that from invading this guy's mind. And he could have easily left the fairy shattered, meaning just a drooling mess. But that's literally every fairy's worst nightmare. So he killed him instead. Another calculated move, but why? Anyway, the second task came, and this time she was in the same arena, but instead there were 2 cages. One for her and one... Lucien was shackled in one, screaming for help, and above him were giant spikes made of ashwood that were on fire, and they were descending. The task was simple. Answer a small riddle and select the right lever. So there's 3 levers in front of her. Multiple choice question, basically. If you choose right, both of you guys live. If not, both of you guys will die a painful death, both of which you will be forced to watch each other die. And everyone's watching. All the fairies are watching. Yeah, we don't even know the riddle. We don't even know, because Farah can't read the riddle. So she don't know the riddle.
She can't read?
But Amarantha doesn't know that she's illiterate. Okay?
Are you kidding me right now?
Yeah, so it just was literally like a disgusting joke from fate that this was her second task. Lucien was screaming because he doesn't know that she's illiterate, and he's like, just choose one. And so Farah is like, okay, I'm going to choose the second one because 2 has always been my lucky number, and 2, me and Tamlin. You
can't be serious.
No, so she puts her hand on 2, her left hand, and it hurts. There's like pain. And she snaps it back, and she looks at her tattoo of the eye, and it almost, she thought she was hallucinating. It literally looked like it was squinting at her for a brief moment. So she tried to touch the first lever, and there was pain. And then she touched the third lever, and there was no pain. And she looked up at the stand, and she looked up at Rhysand, but he looked calm as ever. No emotion, nothing. And finally, she reached and pulled down the third lever, right as the spikes were like this close to Lucien and literally her head. And she had won. Lucien was sobbing, kissing the ground, saying a prayer to the cauldron, and Farah stumbled onto the ground. She cheated. The arm told her what to do, and she would never win another task. Like, this was literally heartbreaking. I guess it's the feeling of like, she wasn't made for this. Like, there's no way. The first one was probably luck. Like, now she's cheating. The third one, she's gonna die and everything is gonna be ruined. She wanted to curl up into a ball and cry, but instead, she heard a voice in her mind. Rhysand's. And it's like she could feel the words in her bones. Don't let her see you cry. Put your hands at your sides and stand up. Stand up. Don't give her the satisfaction of seeing you break. She did as she was told, and Rhysand's voice rang deeper. Good. Stare her down. No tears. Wait till you're back in your cell. Count to 10. Don't look at Tamlin. Stare at her. And then he's like, good girl, just walk away now. Let the crowd part, one step after another. And once she was in her cell, Farah was officially broken. Like, it sounds strange because her first task was worse, but this, like, it felt like she wasn't supposed to win. She didn't have what it took, so that meant the third task she would fail and all hope would die, and she was gonna die. She's, like, almost grieving her death that's gonna happen in a month, right? But it's worse because she's waiting a month for it to happen, right? She doesn't have what it takes. And Rhysand appeared in her cell, after what felt like days of sobbing. You've beaten her second task. Tears are unnecessary. He tried to get her to stop crying by licking a tear away from her cheek.
Licking it?
Yeah, because it's like the most what the thing you can do, I guess, in that moment to snap someone out of it.
Oh, yeah,
and
sure.
she was frozen in shock. And he's like, I figured that would help you to stop crying. And she looks at him and goes, it was disgusting. And he says, was it? Because beneath all your pride and stubbornness, I could have sworn I detected something that felt differently. Interesting. Get out.
She likes him?
No, I don't know if it's just sexual tension or what. But she's like, get out. As usual, your gratitude is overwhelming, Farah. Do you want me to kiss your feet or offer you another week of my life? If you feel compelled to. Who thought the self-righteous human girl couldn't read? Yeah, well, keep your damn mouth shut about it. I'll have to ask Tamlin if this kind of flattery won his heart over. And when he left, Farah started cursing at the walls. She was so fucking pissed. She's pacing the walls like fuck Rhysand. She said it took her a very long time to realize that, whether he knew it or not, he effectively kept her from being completely shattered. Because I guess in that moment she was just so pissed and grossed out by him. It took her away from that like hopeless victim mindset of like, I can't do it. She started pacing the walls being like, this guy, we're gonna kill him. The final party before the third task, Farah was excited to get drunk and try to forget her life. She really was breaking, kind of, okay? Not as bad as right after the second test, but it wasn't great. And it seemed like everyone was partying for her death. It was not a fun party. It was even hard to stare at Tamlin. She didn't even want to stare at him with death just lingering over her. So she went because she was forced to, but also to try and distract herself. And that's when she felt someone hold her hand briefly, like kind of brush their fingers across her hand. And she looked to her side and it was Tamlin. And he walked away and he cocked his head. And she tried as nonchalantly as possible to follow him. And they went into a dark room away from the party, and immediately, I mean, this is high stakes. If they get caught, we don't even know what's gonna happen, okay? But Farah follows him, and in the room, oh yeah, they don't even say anything. They're ripping each other's clothes off because this might be the last time they ever see each other because she might die tomorrow.
They want to do it like one last time?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, there's no like, I hope you don't die, because like, how are you going to even have that conversation? And then the door opens. Rhysand. Shameful. Just shameful. Look what you've done to my pet. He pointed at all the paint smeared around. Amarantha would be greatly aggrieved if she knew that her little warrior was dallying with the human help. I wonder how she'd punish you. Or perhaps she would stay true to her habit and punish Lucian. He still has one eye left after all. And without a word, Tamlin climbed off of Farah, put his clothes back on while staring straight into Farah's eyes, and Rhysand used his magic to get all the paint off of Tamlin. He left the room as if nothing happened. Meanwhile, Farah was still covered with streaks all over her paint. They were alone now, and he laughed. If you were that desperate for release, you could have just asked me. And she spat at him. Pig. You're a fool, Farah. Do you know any idea what could have happened if Amarantha found you two in here? Tamlin might refuse to be her lover, but if she keeps him at her side out of hope that she can break him, dominate him, you're both fools. What do you care? What do I care? What do I care? But before he could answer, the door snapped open, and in a swift movement, Rhysand was shoving his tongue down Farah's throat. Amarantha and Tamlin were standing at the door. Tamlin's eyes were slightly wide.
Oh my
Because
God.
the smeared paint, right? And he had paint on his head. Rhysand let Farah go and gave them a grin, and he bowed dramatically. Amarantha looked delighted. I knew it was a matter of time. You humans are all the same, aren't you? Farah hoped Tamlin knew that, they had to do this for them to not get caught, not because she wanted to kiss Rhysand. But the queen kept going, typical human trash with their inconstant dull hearts. And when they left the room, everyone saw Farah's paint smeared all over her body, and Rhysand's hands filled with paint. And he smirked at her in front of the crowd and said, tired of you for tonight. Go back to your cell. And the whole court whooped and gleed. Oh, look at that little human whore. Yeah. Later that night, he appeared in her cell and he seemed stressed. How do we know he's stressed? His tie is probably like this. I don't know. Okay, he seems stressed, okay? And he says, one wrong move tomorrow and we're all doomed, Farah. If you fail, then Amarantha will rule forever. If she captured Tamlin's power once, who's to say she won't do it again? Tamlin won't be tricked again so easily. Her biggest weapon is that she keeps all of our powers contained, but she can't access them, though she can control us through them. That's why I've never been able to shatter her mind, why she's not dead already. The moment you break her curse, Tamlin's wrath will be so great there will be no force in this world that will keep him from splattering her on the walls.
Oh, so Tamlin can kill her like that?
Yeah.
What?
Who's to say that he won't kill you too? Farah, I drug you, but you wonder why I never touch you beyond your waist and arms? It's the only claim to innocence I have. The only thing that I think will make Tamlin think twice before entering into a battle with me that will cause catastrophic loss of innocent life. It is the only way to convince him that I was on your side. Believe me, I would have liked nothing more than to enjoy you, but there are bigger things than taking a human woman to my bed.
Why are they so thirsty over her?
Yeah, I don't know.
Why?
I don't know, bro.
Is she that special? She's a human, right?
Honey, it's the way it is with the MCs. It's the way it is with the main characters. And she said, like what? Like what's more important? Like my territory? My remaining people enslaved to a tyrant queen who can end their life with a single word? Why did Amarantha target you and make you her whore? My father killed Tamlin's father and his brothers. She wanted the son of her friend's murderer to be punished. She hated my father enough to punish me, so here we are, all our fate in the hands of a literate human. What a mess. I've told you too much. If you were clever, you would go to Amarantha with my secrets. Maybe you could bargain Tamlin for it. But Farah would never do that. She said, when you healed my arm, you didn't need a bargain. You could have demanded every day of the year and I would have said yes. I know. And with that, he vanished. And there Farah was, in her final task, in the throne room. The room was quiet, there was no cheering, no excitement, more dread than anything. Like, what the hell is going on? Amarantha was the only one in a good mood, with Tamlin by her side. Your final task, Farah. Any words before you die? Farah stared up at Tamlin. I love you. No matter what she says about it, no matter if it's only with my insignificant human heart, even when they burn my body, I will love you. There was no reaction. You never figured out the riddle, did you? Get it over with. Amarantha asked if Tamlin had any final words for her, but Tamlin sat there unmoving, and 3 fairies with brown sacks over their heads were pulled into the throne room, and she saw it. 3 ashwood daggers appeared before her on pillows. Your final task, Farah, is to stab each one of these unfortunate souls in the heart. They're innocent. Not that it should matter to you, since it wasn't a concern the day you killed Tamlin's poor sentinel. You can always refuse, though, and I will take your life in exchange. But a bargain is bargain. I'm offering you a gift, honestly. Given your history of murdering our kind, this should be easy. 3 lives for the fate of everyone else. Innocent people. Farah is a moral person. This is a moral dilemma. For her own future, for her own happiness, for her own love.
Yeah, but this is like the classic Charlie.
Yeah, but she's a hunter. It's not for survival or self-defense. This is cold-blooded murder.
Okay, so this is literally
just
like...
Yeah, the trolley, yeah.
Yeah, do you kill 3 to save...
Exactly.
Everyone else? Or do you don't make an action and sacrifice everyone? Yeah.
This was basically murdering Farah's soul, and Amarantha knew it. But too much had been lost and everything would have been in vain. So she walked up to stab the first one. Not so fast, Farah! And the sack was pulled off, and she saw a handsome male fae begging her, please, please don't do this, please don't do this. She could hear people in the crowd crying, loved ones, family, sobbing. He was practically yelling, don't! As she lifted the dagger and she whispered, I'm so sorry. And she had tears streaming down her face as she plunged it into his heart. His face was full of shock and hate until it finally, he closed his eyes. Very well, Farah. Now to the next. Oh, don't look so miserable, Farah. Aren't you having fun? The next one was a woman. Her face was simple. She was crying. She began whispering her chant, the prayer that Tamlin had given the fairy in their house when his wings had been ripped off. But Farah realized the woman looked at her. She wanted to give her life. She wanted it to be fast and quick, and she wanted to sacrifice herself. And that was worse. Farah grabbed her bony shoulder, I'm so sorry, and stabbed her. Farah was sobbing at this point. People in the crowd are weeping. Amarantha was smiling. Only one person left. And the hood was ripped off. And there, staring up at her, was Tamlin.
I thought Tamlin was on the stage.
She looked back up on the stage, and it was at a tour. Remember, Alice told her, don't trust your senses?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Something wrong, Farah? And Farah said, not fair. Fair? I wasn't aware you humans knew the concept. You killed Tamlin and is free. You can have him all to yourself. Unless you think it would be more appropriate to forfeit your life. After all, what's the point in surviving if he's gone? Tragic, really. What will it be, Farah? Farah couldn't do it. She knew it was a bad idea to make a deal with Amarantha. Alice had warned her, no deals with anybody. And then it hit her. Alice said something. There's another part of the cure that she can't tell her. Farah searched Tamlin's face, and she realized all the conversations he let her overhear. Technically, he could have made it so that he glamored her so that she couldn't hear anything. All those conversations in the house that he had with Lucian, they must have been planned. All the ones about the blight? Because why would they talk about the blight together when it's just them, unless they think she's listening? And all of them, they mentioned something really odd. That Tamlin had a stone heart. And she's realizing Amarantha would never risk Tamlin dying because he is what she wanted in the end. He is the ultimate domination. If she breaks him, she feels like she won. Why would she want that to be gone? And she knew that Farah wouldn't kill him because she couldn't kill him because his heart had been turned to stone for the curse. What? Farah knew there was a chance she was wrong, but she felt like she had to try. She took the dagger. The entire room was silent, and she walked towards him, and she had to be right. And there it was. The slight upturn of his lip, and he looked up at her, and she knew it. She whispered, I love you, and she stabbed him. And he cried out as the dagger went in, but there was a thud. And when she pulled out, the dagger was bent at the tip. Tamlin was hurt, but he was going to heal. He was not dead. Amarantha climbed to her feet, and Rhysand was grinning in the crowd. There were whispers, rumors, murmurs, confusion, but Tamlin was healing too slowly. Like, literally, she's there, like, hey, can you heal so you can kill Amarantha? The curse should be broken, no? A fairy in the crowd yelled, free her, she won! But Amarantha smirked. I'll free her when I see fit. Farah didn't specify when I had to free them, just that I had to at some point, perhaps when Farah is dead. I will free them. Only the riddle could have freed them immediately. Foolish, stupid human. Besides, I'm going to kill you now. And Farah heard the bones in her body crack, and her body was suspended in the air and slammed back down. And Amarantha was screaming at her, admit it, you don't really love him. I will spare you if you admit it. You cowardly, lying, inconstant bit of human garbage. Farah felt like she was being ripped from the inside. You think you're worthy of him, a high lord? You think you deserve anything at all? Farah could hear Rhysand yell her name over and over again, but I don't know if it was in her mind, and then she blacked out. What are you but mud and bones and worm meat? What are you compared to our kind, that you think you're worthy of us? Fairies in the crowd, some of them were cheering, a lot of them were calling foul play, demanding Tamlin be released. Farah is blacking out, and she wakes up and she opens her eyes and she sees Rhysand grabbing the ashwood dagger and aiming for Amarantha. Oh, wow. But before he can even get close, she doesn't even look at him. She throws him against the wall. And she screams, you treacherous piece of filth. You're just as bad as these human beasts. You were planning this all along. And she slammed him up against the wall again. Nobody dared to even help him. Farah screamed, please, stop. And something strange happened. In that moment, Farah felt like there was a weird bond between her and Rhysand. Like, for a brief flash moment, she could see the situation from her eyes, but then all of a sudden she was seeing it from Rhysand's eyes. And then back to hers. It was almost like she was switching bodies, and it was so confusing. But Amarantha screamed, stop, stop, don't pretend you care. And then the memories of all the dark moments in her life, everything she had seen in her life, starvation, desperation, her family, they were flashing before her eyes. Say you don't love him. Tamlin was awake now, but he was weak, and he was pleading on the ground. Amarantha, please, stop this. I'm sorry for what I did. I'm sorry. Please, stop. But Amarantha was filled with rage. Say you don't love him. Admit it to your inconstant heart. Please, Amarantha, I'll do anything. Spare her. And in those last moments, Farah felt it in her bones. Amarantha was screaming, say it, you vile beast. You don't love him. And Farah had tears coming out of her eyes and said, love. The answer to the riddle is love. Okay, that part really did stress me out. I'm not going to lie to you. Tamlin's eyes went wide and something cracked in Farah's spine. She could see from afar what was happening. It's almost like she was watching from Rhysand's body. She could see her body in Tamlin's arms and a flash of red in the crowd. And Lucien came out and he took off his fox mask.
Oh, all of their thing went away?
Tamlin looked up and Amarantha whispered, please. Before a flash of golden light exploded, Tamlin's curse had been broken. And he literally ripped Amarantha to shreds. She was splattered on the walls, literally ripped out her throat. And that's when Farah realized she was seeing everything through Rhysand's eyes and not hers. And then she watched as Tamlin scooped up Farah's limp body after killing Amarantha, cradling her to his chest, and he was sobbing. And everyone was watching with tears in their eyes. All the high fae, all the high lords.
Is she,
She's dead.
But she can still see?
Through Rhysand.
How is that? What
I don't know.
What's going on?
And she wanted to scream, I'm right here, I can see you. But who she saw as the High Court of Summer, the High Lord of Summer, he came forward, put his hand on Tamlin's shoulder, and dropped something in his palm. It was like a silver orb, glimmering. Then another High Lord came forward. None of them said anything. They just each dropped a silver orb on his palm. And then finally, she felt like she was moving, but it was Rhysand. And it's almost like the words were coming out of her mouth, but they weren't hers. And he dropped an orb, and he put his arm on Tamlin's shoulder and said, for what she gave, we will bestow what our predecessors have granted to few before. This makes us even. And Tamlin dropped the seeds of light into her and whispered, I love you. And suddenly, she was back in her body.
Wow, so they had Dragon Balls and then they summoned the dragon and brought back the dead.
Yeah, they were like, here's some balls for you.
Oh man, this is a Dragon Ball.
And suddenly, Farah felt like she was floating and she gasped. And there on the cold floor, she felt no pain, no blood, no broken bones. And there was Tamlin with his mask off. And he was everything she dreamed he would be. And she knew what this meant.
Is he handsome?
Yeah, he was hot. She had become a high fae just now.
She became a high fae?
Because the High Lords had given her power. So we don't even know how powerful she's going to be. I'm assuming it's going to be really powerful.
Bro,
because think about all the High Lords giving a little bit of each.
Twilight.
Yeah.
She turned into one of them.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
man.
Tamlin obviously knew that she would be upset. And he said, it was the only way I could save you. In the next few days, word passed. The High Lords gathered to discuss what to do next. All of them had regained their powers, how to fix it, what to do with the King of Highburn, what this meant for everyone. And it should have been a joyous moment for Farah, but she knew that she killed people. Like, she straight up slaughtered people. Like, Claire's whole family, they died because of her. Those two fairies, even Andres, like, she killed so many people for what? So that she could be high fae and immortal? Like, how is she even better than any of the fae that she was warned about? Before they left to go to Spring Court, she ran into Rhysand. And his wings were out, but he was still in his human form. And he appeared. What do you want? Just to say goodbye before your beloved whisks you away forever? Not forever, right? Don't you still get a week every month? How could I forget? Why? Because when legends get written, I didn't want to be remembered for standing on the sidelines. I want my future offspring to know that I was there and that I fought against her in the end, even if I couldn't do anything useful. I didn't want you to fight alone, or die alone. And she said, thank you. And he said, well, I doubt you'll be saying that when I take you to night court. They have a brief conversation about how he really likes flying, because I guess he's like a raven. I don't know, Batman.
A rat mate?
No, he's Batman, okay? And she's like, oh, you never told me you liked flying. And he says, everything I love has always had a tendency to be taken from me. I tell very few about the things that I like. How does it feel to be high fae? I'm a mortal who has been mortal. My body feels different, but my heart, I don't know, I guess it feels the same. I thought it would change. I thought it would get easier to live with everything I did. Maybe I wouldn't care so much. Maybe I could convince myself that their deaths weren't in vain. Maybe immortality would have taken away that kind of pain. And he just says, be glad of your human heart, Farah. Pity those who don't feel anything at all. Goodbye, for now. And he backed up to leave, but when their eyes locked one last time, there was this brief expression that flashed in his face. Like, you know how he had pure excitement that day when he was like, he found her in the dining room or whatever?
Yeah.
There was like this weird, his eyes just went wild. It looked like shock or something. Pure shock, and he actually stumbled back. We're talking about the High Lord of the Night Court, who never stumbles, graceful as ever. He like took a stumble back. And then he immediately, like, everything fixed. And he left. And it was the weirdest thing.
Just by looking at her?
Yeah, there was like a moment that they shared, like a look, and then he just had this like shocked look. But it wasn't like, oh my God, I'm shocked by beauty, but it was like, what the f***? It was weird. But she couldn't ask about it. He was already gone. And besides, she had a lot more to think about, because later that day, she gripped Tamlin's hand, and she knew that there was going to be a mountain to overcome, right? To get through all that trauma, all that grief. But here, on top of the hill, she could see the Spring Court Manor and Lucien, without his mask, calling them for dinner. And they would deal with all of that later. Because for now and for today, they were home.
So it's a happy ending for the book one, at least?
Yeah, but I think book 2, there's going to be a lot of Sorry.
Can I have one? Is it good? Is it good?
Not great.
What do you mean it's not great?
It's subpar. Yeah, what did you think?
A little cringy, but it's not bad. Mm-hmm. Definitely YA.
You know, it's like the Inheritance games. It's cringy. There are points when you think about it, and maybe it's just my retelling of it, but when you actually read the book, you get so sucked into it.
No, it's good.
Yeah.
I was hooked.
Yeah.
I was hooked.
Yeah, but then, like, I guess when you're trying to, like, I think the best part about reading books is to not be snobby. Just read the book for what books are. You know, like when you're reading a snobby book, if you're reading Shakespeare, be as snobby as you want, because that's the audience it's catering towards. But when you're reading a YA book, just feel the feels. That's what I tell myself. Just feel the feels. And I felt the feels. I felt it. I felt it. Anyway.
So how do you feel about Raven? Is it Raven?
Rhysand.
You think he's a better catch or the main guy? Who do you like more?
Rhysand.
You like Rhysand more?
Yeah.
More than the main guy?
Yeah.
Because the main guy's love is just too...
Just feels too pure.
Yeah.
I like a little nasty, you know? Anyway, let's go. I'm just kidding.
What?
Yeah, what are your thoughts on this? Let me know in the comments, and I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for the next episode. Make sure to check out the books. I'm going to link them in the description and in the pinned comment. Bye.